I apologize for asking, but are you saying you'd rather I not come to the wedding tomorrow? I want to make sure I understand your meaning clearly. What I meant, I believe Marty would also prefer it if his less fortunate sister, who works at a supermarket, didn't attend. It was the first time I truly felt the sting of being looked down upon. They claimed it was for Marty's benefit. Invoking my brother's name left me speechless. My name is Joanna. When I was in ninth grade, our parents passed away in a car accident, leaving Marty and me alone. At first, I couldn't grasp the enormity of it. With no reliable relatives, our teachers stepped in to handle the funeral arrangements and other necessities. I could only watch, tightly holding Marty's hand. It was only after the funeral, in our quiet house, that the reality sank in. I wept uncontrollably, tears flowing until exhaustion claimed me. When I awoke, a strange calm had settled over me, as if I had expended a lifetime's worth of tears in one night. With a clear mind, I pondered how best to move forward, ensuring Marty's well-being above all else. That was my priority. Opting not to pursue college, I decided to enter the workforce instead. Concerns about finding a job without a high school diploma nagged at me, but a classmate's parent who owned a supermarket came through with an opportunity. Would you be interested in working here? The pay isn't great, but the team is wonderful. While others relished their high school experience in crisp new uniforms, I couldn't help but envy them. Yet practicality dictated I had to work to make ends meet. Thankfully, Marty understood our circumstances. When he returned from school, he pitched in with dinner and chores. Knowing Marty's kind nature, I wanted him to keep enjoying what he loved most, playing soccer. Marty considered quitting due to the travel costs for matches, but both the coach and I persuaded him to stay. I might be biased, but I truly believe Marty has a natural talent for soccer. On game days, I would either take time off work or rearrange my schedule just to be there to support him. Initially, other parents were taken aback to see a sister, not a parent, cheering Marty on. However, as Marty's skills on the field flourished and my encouragement grew louder, the curious glances gradually faded away. Once Marty reached high school, scouts from colleges and even professional leagues began attending his games. This attention ultimately helped him secure an athletic scholarship for college. When it was time for college, Marty declared, "I'm going to work. I can't keep relying on you, sis." I shook my head firmly. "I want you to keep pursuing your dreams, Marty. Through you, I get to experience the youth I missed." Marty frowned slightly at my words. "I'll make it to the pros for sure and take care of you, sis." "Thank you, but I don't need you to worry about me. My only dream is to see you become a professional soccer player." I smiled warmly to reassure him. "I'll be fine." "Sure, sis. You're the one who's always working hard," Marty conceded. But in my eyes, Marty was the true embodiment of hard work. True to his word, Marty turned professional after excelling in college. I continued at the supermarket, eventually scaling back to part-time hours. Time flew by, almost 15 years since I first started working there. One evening during a break, a text from Marty lit up my phone. It read, "There's someone I want you to meet." I jumped up in excitement, momentarily forgetting I was in the break room at the supermarket. The news that Marty had found someone special filled me with such joy that tears streamed down my face as I shared the story with my coworkers and manager. Marty had always been a good-natured kid, hardly ever asking for anything. He shed his rebellious streak entirely after our parents passed away. He even considered giving up soccer, his greatest passion, just to support me. And now, I was about to meet someone who meant a lot to him. Could I be any happier? The text message contained all the details, date, time, and the name of a restaurant in a nearby hotel. When I shared the news with my coworkers, they insisted, "You've got to dress up." I was usually mindful of my appearance, but I didn't own anything particularly fancy. After finishing my part-time shift, my coworkers insisted on taking me to the shopping district. We visited boutiques I rarely frequented, trying on various outfits until I settled on a classy yet simple dress. From there, we ventured to a large mall where I splurged on branded makeup and received a tutorial. Despite the exhaustion that comes from shopping after work, it felt like a welcome release. I had eagerly anticipated this day, counting down on my calendar for weeks. A few days later, I nervously sat in the hotel lobby where we had agreed to meet, dressed in the outfit I had chosen with my coworkers' help. My attempt at makeup followed the tutorial I had received, hoping I had done it justice. As I anxiously waited, I suddenly heard a familiar voice behind me calling out, "Sis." Slowly turning around, I saw Marty in a suit standing beside a stunning woman with long hair. "Sis, you look stunning." I made sure to dress up too, Marty exclaimed proudly as he introduced me to someone special. I chuckled at his remark, which seemed to please him. Let me introduce you. This is my fiancée, Vanessa. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Vanessa, your future sister-in-law. She greeted me warmly. Receiving such a gracious welcome from such a striking woman only added to my nerves. Managing a smile, I replied, I'm Marty's sister, Joanna. After the introductions, we decided to move to a nearby restaurant. Once seated, conversation flowed as we discussed various topics. Vanessa comes from a well-known family around here, and her father is apparently quite wealthy. Marty has told me about you. After your parents passed away, you've been like a parent to him. Parent-like, I wouldn't say. Don't be modest. You gave up high school for me and went to work. Wait, you didn't finish high school? Yeah, I started working right after middle school at a supermarket. It's been 15 years now. Just then, something felt off. Though Vanessa was nodding and making cute faces, it felt like she was looking down on me from behind her eyes. I initially dismissed it as my imagination, but then I caught her disdainful expression when Marty wasn't looking. That dress looks lovely on you, she complimented me, yet the way she appraised me from head to toe and snickered quietly confirmed my suspicions. She was definitely looking down on me. Next year, we're planning to get married, Marty announced somewhat sheepishly. Honestly, I wasn't overjoyed, but if this was Marty's decision, I had to support him. All I could manage was a broad smile as I congratulated them. As our meeting concluded, I had my doubts, but if they were happy, who was I to intervene? I chose to let it pass. Days flew by, and suddenly Marty's wedding day was upon us. As I prepared my outfit and gathered necessities, Vanessa's call interrupted me. I quickly returned it, concerned about the reason for her call. I'm busy too. Could you get to the point? Her abrupt greeting caught me off guard. I apologize for running late. It's my fault, I said sincerely. On the other end, Vanessa sighed audibly before delivering a surprising request. Could you, sister-in-law, please consider not attending the wedding tomorrow? What? I don't understand, I replied, taken aback. Vanessa, what do you mean? I mean exactly what I said. I don't think even Marty would want his sister, who works at a grocery store, to be there, she said with a condescending tone that made me keenly aware of being looked down upon. Her disdain was palpable, and she made no effort to disguise it. But I can't possibly miss my brother's wedding, I insisted firmly. Vanessa, that's not an option. As the bride, I decide what's possible. Please don't force me to repeat myself. It's also for Marty's sake, Vanessa countered, a statement that left me with little room to argue. The guest list for the wedding included Marty's coach and teammates, as well as influential figures from Vanessa's family's business circles, people often referred to as elites. I couldn't shake the feeling that my presence as a high school dropout might disrupt the ambience. Marty might reassure me, but I'm sure others won't feel the same. Perhaps following Vanessa's suggestion and not attending would be best. Fine, I won't come. Can I at least send a congratulatory message, even if it feels impersonal, over the phone? If I can't say it in person, then what's the point? Forget it, Vanessa, I said curtly, ending the call. Shocked, I stared at my phone, now silent in my hand. I wish I could have witnessed Marty's happiness firsthand. Shoving my packed bag into a corner of the room, I crawled into bed, deciding to sleep through the day. I had no energy for anything else, and I feared that if I let my emotions surface, tears would follow. I tried to force my eyes shut, but sleep eluded me until morning. When I finally checked my phone, I saw multiple missed calls from Marty, expected, given the circumstances. The family was supposed to leave for the wedding venue early that morning. Just then, another call from Marty came through. Hello, sis, where are you? He asked urgently. I'm on my way, Marty, I replied. I can't do it today, I added after a pause. I could feel the disappointment in his voice. Why? Marty asked softly. I hesitated, torn about revealing the truth. Before I could respond, Marty continued. Did Vanessa say something? Is that why? How did? Before I could inquire further, he cuts me off. Forget it, just come over now. We'll talk later. With that, he ends the call abruptly. Despite my initial decision not to attend, I hastily prepare and leave home, my mind troubled by concerns for Marty and Vanessa. Arriving at the venue, I hear raised voices even before entering the waiting room. Guided by the venue staff, I step inside to witness Marty, Vanessa, and her parents engaged in a heated argument. Surrounding them, bewildered relatives who were meant to be guests look on in confusion. What do you mean not inviting Joanna to the wedding? Marty's voice carries frustration. I can't have a supermarket worker as my sister-in-law. It's embarrassing, Vanessa retorts, her parents nodding in agreement beside her. It's disheartening to see them all aligned on this issue. Witnessing Marty's escalating anger, I see this frustration boiling over. What do you mean I should be embarrassed? Joanna has worked tirelessly her whole life to take care of me, he asserts passionately. Vanessa scoffs at his defense. Because of your sister, I might never marry. You know I should come first, right? That's right, Vanessa asserts confidently, as if it's self-evident. Absolutely, her parents chime in unison. Meanwhile, Marty looks ready to explode with rage. Marty, Vanessa, let's try to calm down. I interject hastily, attempting to diffuse the tension. But Vanessa suddenly notices my presence and snaps. Why are you here? People like you, who work at supermarkets, weren't invited. Leave now. Why does she have to say things like that? I thought, struggling to hold back tears in front of Vanessa. Just then, a voice broke through the murmurs of the crowd of onlookers. Wait a moment, I can't let that comment slide, declared the voice. Its owner pushed through the gathering and stood before us. Coach. It was Marty's team coach, who had arrived early for the ceremony and intervened upon hearing the disturbance. Judging someone by their occupation is unjust, he asserted firmly. Vanessa shot him a pained glance. Even she couldn't maintain her composure in front of the coach. Well, that may be, the coach remarked with a wry smile as he pulled a book from his bag. My initial sadness evaporated, replaced by a rush of embarrassment. Are you sure she's low-level, even by your standards? He challenged. That's a bestseller. What does this have to do with anything? I exclaimed, recognizing the book in his hands. It was a novel I had written under the pseudonym Annie. Vanessa and her parents were left speechless. The coach held up the book, revealing my secret identity as its author. The novel traced back to a time before Marty's soccer career took off. When life settled down after our parents' passing, I turned to reading as a solace, often spending time at a library near my supermarket workplace. That library had a public computer corner where I first explored writing, fueled by my passion for books. On a whim, I entered a contest and won, leading to connections with a publishing house. Now, I'm a recognized author of several bestsellers and often featured in the media. I've never heard this story, Vanessa finally spoke after a moment of stunned silence. Marty interrupted sharply. I never mentioned it, but it's true, fixing a firm gaze on Vanessa. Marty's sincerity seemed to sway Vanessa. She turned to me, her demeanor shifting from skeptical to genuinely impressed. If you're such an accomplished person, that changes things. Please join us for the ceremony. Don't toy with me. I'm not marrying you, Marty declared firmly, causing Vanessa to bristle. What did you just say? She retorted, her anger palpable. The coach intervened, holding Vanessa back. We can't go on like everything's normal after the way you've treated my sister. Marty continued, his voice resolute. I'm sorry, but I can't go through with this, Vanessa. Amidst protests from Vanessa's parents and the relatives who had gathered for the wedding, Marty offered a heartfelt apology. This isn't happening, Vanessa's parents exclaimed, restrained by their own relatives. After some heated exchanges, it was decided that Vanessa's guests would leave. Vanessa herself continued to demand, you have to marry me, as they departed. In the dressing room afterward, it was just Marty and me. Mary slumped onto the sofa, looking utterly drained. Are you sure it was the right decision to call off the wedding? I couldn't resist asking, though I knew it might reopen old wounds. Marty let out a bitter laugh. Being the soccer player means your time in the spotlight is limited. I don't think a marriage with Vanessa, who's so focused on her career, would have lasted. His words made sense. Marty had a valid point. I can imagine how Vanessa, who belittled me for working at a supermarket, would treat you if you gave up soccer, I remarked, thinking aloud. Why didn't you mention that I'm a writer? I asked Marty, curious about his reasoning. Marty had kept my identity as a writer from Vanessa, and I sensed there was a deliberate reason behind his silence. When I brought it up, Marty simply smiled. I couldn't shake the feeling that Marty had seen through Vanessa's facade. Numerous discussions unfolded between our families, ultimately leading to the formal cancellation of the engagement. Vanessa and her parents vehemently resisted to the very end, but the intervention of other relatives prevailed. Despite the broken engagement, Marty continued to excel in his soccer career. In contrast, Venus's family endured public scrutiny after her outburst in the waiting room was splashed across the media. As for me, I'm contemplating transforming this ordeal into a novel while balancing my writing career with my job at the supermarket. I intend to keep supporting Marty just as we've always done.
I used to believe that love conquered all, that trust was unbreakable when built on years of shared dreams and promises. That was before I found the statement that shattered my world into a million gleaming pieces. My name is Lucille, and until last Tuesday I thought I had it all figured out. A corner office at Morrison & Blake Financial Services, a marriage that made my colleagues envious, and the kind of life my grandmother had always dreamed for me. The inheritance she left me was supposed to be our nest egg, our future. Another late night? Nigel's voice carried from the kitchen as I walked through our front door. The familiar smell of his signature pasta filled the house. The Harrison portfolio needed reviewing, I called back, dropping my briefcase by the stairs. Something felt off about their numbers. He appeared in the doorway, dish towel over his shoulder, that boyish smile that had made me fall for him 8 years ago still intact. Always the perfectionist. Come here. I let him pull me into a hug, breathing in the scent of garlic and his cologne. If I'd known then what I know now, I would have pushed him away. Mail came for you, he said, gesturing to the pile on the counter. Looks important. I flipped through the envelopes until I reached one from our bank. Usually Nigel handled the joint accounts, but this one was addressed to me specifically. I tore it open, expecting nothing more than a routine statement. The first transaction that caught my eye made my blood run cold. Nigel, I said, keeping my voice steady, why is there a transfer of $50,000 to your mother's account? He froze mid-stir, his back to me. Oh, that. Mum needed some help with her medical bills. Medical bills? I flipped to the next page. And I suppose Bruce needed medical attention too. Another $40,000 to his account? The wooden spoon clattered against the pot. Luce, I can explain. Explain what? My finger traced down the list of transactions. That you've been systematically draining my grandmother's inheritance to fund your family's lifestyle? The Maldives vacation your mother wouldn't stop bragging about at Christmas. Was that her medical treatment? He turned to face me, his expression a mixture of guilt and defiance. Their family, Lucille, they needed help. They needed help? I laughed, but it came out more like a sob. That money was meant for our future, Nigel, for the children we talked about having. How much is left? His silence was answer enough. How long? I demanded, gripping the counter to steady myself. How long have you been lying to me? 2 years, he whispered. Mom was in trouble with her mortgage, and then Bruce's business was failing, and it just snowballed. I thought about all the times I'd sat across from clients, advising them on protecting their assets, while my own husband had been stealing from me. The irony wasn't lost on me. Does your mother know where the money came from? He nodded slowly. They all do. They thought you'd understand, that since we're family now... Family? I cut him off. Family doesn't steal from each other, Nigel. Family doesn't conspire behind your back to take what isn't theirs. My phone buzzed. A text from Sandra. Drinks tonight. You seem off lately. If she only knew. We can fix this, Nigel pleaded, reaching for my hand. I pulled away. I'll talk to Mom, make arrangements to pay it back. With what money? I asked quietly. Your mother's vacation fund? Bruce's new Mercedes? The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Outside, a car alarm went off, its shrill wail matching the screaming in my head. I trusted you, I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. I trusted all of you. Lucille, please. I need some air. I grabbed my keys from the counter, the statement still clutched in my other hand. Don't follow me. As I drove through the darkening streets, my grandmother's voice echoed in my head. Never let anyone make you feel small, Lucille. Not even the ones you love. I pulled into the parking lot of our favourite bar, where Sandra would be waiting. My phone showed 3 missed calls from Nigel, but something else caught my eye. an email notification about our holiday home's property taxes. The holiday home we'd bought last year, the one Nigel's family didn't know about yet. A plan began to form in my mind, sharp and clear as crystal. If they wanted to take what was mine, maybe it was time to give them exactly what they deserved. I smiled for the first time since opening that statement. Nigel's family had no idea what was coming. "You're going to do what?" Sandra nearly choked on her martini, her eyes wide with disbelief. I took a slow sip of my wine, letting the warmth of revenge wash over me. "I'm going to sell the holiday home, the one Nigel thinks is our secret nest egg." "And then what? Show them the sold sign and say, 'Surprise.'" Sandra leaned forward, her voice dropping. "Lucille, this isn't you. The old me died when I saw that bank statement." I pulled out my phone, showing her the real estate agent's message. "The market's hot right now. I can get well above what we paid for it." "Have you even confronted his mother about this?" The memory of Alia's smug face at Christmas flashed through my mind. "Oh, you mean when she was showing off her Maldives photos? The ones my grandmother's money paid for?" Sandra winced. "Okay, point taken, but..." My phone buzzed. Another message from Nigel. I ignored it. "Remember what my grandmother used to say?" I asked, tracing the rim of my wine glass. "Sometimes the best revenge is letting people crash into the consequences of their own actions." "I don't think she meant it quite like this," Sandra muttered. The next morning, I met with Rachel, my real estate agent, at her office. The morning sun cast long shadows across her desk as she spread out the paperwork. "You're sure about this?" she asked, highlighting the signature lines. "It's a beautiful property." "I'm sure." I signed my name with steady hands. "How long until we can list it?" "We can have it up by this afternoon. The market's incredibly active right now." Perfect. Phase 1 of my plan was in motion. When I got home that evening, Nigel was waiting. He'd been sleeping in the guest room since our confrontation, but tonight he was in the kitchen, cooking again. A peace offering. "I talked to Mom," he said as I walked in. "She's willing to work something out." "Is she?" I kept my voice neutral, setting my briefcase down. "And what exactly did she suggest?" He stirred the pot nervously. She offered to let us use their timeshare in Florida. "As compensation." I laughed, the sound sharp enough to make him flinch. "Their timeshare, the one they bought with my money?" "Lucille, please. They're trying." "Not hard enough." I pulled out my laptop, making a show of checking my email. "But speaking of properties, I was thinking we should invite your family to the holiday home. You know, the one we bought last year." His spoon clattered against the pot. "What? Why not? It might be nice, all of us together. One big, happy family." The words tasted like vinegar in my mouth. "But we agreed to keep that place private, our special getaway." I smiled, thinking of the sold sign that would soon be standing in the front yard. "Times change, Nigel. People change. Besides, your mother's always talking about how family should share everything." He studied my face, uncertainty clouding his features. "You're serious about this?" "Absolutely." I opened my phone and started typing. "In fact, I'm sending them all invitations right now. Next weekend would be perfect." "Lucille." He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "Don't you trust me?" I echoed his words from countless conversations, watching them hit their mark. Later that night, I sat on our back porch, my grandmother's old shawl wrapped around my shoulders. The stars were bright, reminding me of nights spent on her porch, listening to her stories of resilience and dignity in the face of betrayal. My phone lit up with responses from Nigel's family. Aaliyah's message was typically condescending. "How lovely of you to finally share with the family. We accept, of course." Bruce's response was immediate. "Great. Trisha and I could use a weekend away." I closed my eyes, imagining their faces when they realized what I'd done. The property would be sold by Thursday, leaving just enough time for the new owners to take possession before the family's planned arrival. Sandra's words from the bar echoed in my head. "This isn't you." Maybe she was right. Maybe this wasn't who I used to be. But then again, I used to be the woman who trusted her husband, who believed in family loyalty, who thought love meant something. My phone buzzed again. A message from Rachel. "First showing tomorrow. Multiple buyers interested. I smiled into the darkness. Grandmother always said that sometimes the universe has a way of balancing the scales. She just never mentioned that sometimes you have to help it along. Inside, I heard Nigel on the phone, probably talking to his mother. His voice was muffled, but I caught fragments. Different lately. Worried. Don't know what to do. Good. Let him worry. Let them all worry. I pulled my grandmother's shawl tighter around my shoulders and started making lists in my head. People to call, arrangements to make, pieces to move into place. The game was on, and this time I was writing the rules. The restaurant buzzed with dinner conversation as I sat across from Aliyah, watching her dissect her overpriced salmon with surgical precision. She'd insisted on this mother-daughter dinner before the weekend getaway, probably to scope out my intentions. I must say, she dabbed her lips with her napkin, this invitation came as quite a surprise. You've always been so private about your affairs. I smiled, cutting into my steak. Well, as you always say, family should share everything. Her fork paused halfway to her mouth. Indeed, though I hope you understand our concern about Nigel lately. He seems troubled. Does he? I took a sip of wine. I hadn't noticed. Come now, Lucille. She reached across the table, her manicured hand stopping short of touching mine. We both know things haven't been quite right since that unfortunate business with the money. Unfortunate business? The wine turned bitter in my mouth. Is that what we're calling theft now? Aliyah's smile tightened. We preferred to think of it as family helping family. Surely you understand. What I understand, I cut in, is that my grandmother worked 60 years as a teacher to leave me that inheritance. But please, tell me more about how your Maldives vacation was family helping family. A couple at the next table glanced our way. Aliyah lowered her voice, leaning forward. Now, dear, let's not make a scene. We're all trying to move forward, aren't we? That's why you've invited us to this lovely holiday home? Exactly. I forced a smile. It's time everyone got what they deserve. My phone vibrated. A text from Rachel. Paperwork finalized. Keys transfer Thursday. Everything all right? Aliyah asked, noticing my expression. Perfect. I tucked the phone away. Just confirming the weekend arrangements. Later that evening, I found Nigel waiting up in the living room. How was dinner with Mom? Illuminating. I dropped my keys in the bowl. Your brother called, by the way. He's bringing Roberto. My nephew, Nigel frowned, but he hates family gatherings. Apparently, Tricia insisted, something about family bonding. Nigel stood, approaching me cautiously. Luce, are you sure about this weekend? We could still cancel. And disappoint your mother, I stepped around him. She's so looking forward to seeing our holiday home, unless there's some reason you don't want them to come. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous tell I'd noticed years ago. No, it's just, you've been different lately. Distant. Have I? I met his eyes. Or am I just finally seeing things clearly? The next morning, Sandra ambushed me at my office during lunch. This has gone far enough, she announced, dropping into the chair across from my desk. I talked to Rachel. I set down my sandwich. You what? She told me the house sold yesterday above asking price. Sandra leaned forward. Lucille, what happens when they show up and find strangers living there? Justice happens. I started gathering papers, avoiding her gaze. Karma happens. No, humiliation happens. To everyone involved, including you. She grabbed my wrist, forcing me to look at her. Is that really what your grandmother would want? My grandmother would want me to stand up for myself. Stand up, yes, but this? She shook her head. This is something else entirely. My phone buzzed. A text from Tricia. Roberto's so excited about the weekend. Thank you for bringing the family together like this. Sandra saw the message. Even the kid? Really? He's 16, not 6. But something twisted in my stomach. Besides, he should learn early that actions have consequences. Like his aunt's actions? Sandra stood, gathering her purse. Just think about what you're really trying to accomplish here, and whether it's worth the cost. After she left, I stared at the family photo on my desk, taken last Christmas, before I knew the truth. Aaliyah in her expensive new jewellery, Bruce showing off his watch, Trisha fussing over Roberto, Nigel's arm around my waist. All of it paid for with my grandmother's money. My phone rang, Rachel again. The new owners want to move in Friday morning. Will that be a problem? I thought about Aaliyah's smug smile at dinner, about Nigel's nervous hands, about Roberto's excitement. No, I said firmly. No problem at all. That evening, I packed my overnight bag for the weekend, laying out the documents I'd need. Property sale papers, bank statements, proof of every transaction they'd tried to hide. Nigel appeared in the doorway. Need help packing? No. I zipped the bag closed. Everything's exactly where it needs to be. Tomorrow they'd all learn what it feels like to have something taken away. Tomorrow the scales would finally balance. I just hoped Sandra was wrong about the cost. The caravan of cars pulled into the holiday home's driveway just as the sun began to set. I watched through the kitchen window as Aaliyah emerged from her Mercedes, designer sunglasses perched on her head despite the fading light. "This location is divine," she called out, while Bruce helped Trisha unload their SUV. "Though I would have chosen something a bit more substantial." Roberto slouched out of the back seat, headphones firmly in place, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. At least someone was being honest about their feelings. "Mum, please," Nigel said, carrying their bags inside. "It's perfect for what we need." What they needed. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Lucille, darling," Trisha bustled in, pulling me into an unwanted hug. "This is so generous of you, bringing the family together like this." I extracted myself from her embrace. "Well, you know what they say about family and sharing." "Speaking of sharing," Bruce appeared, already heading for the wine fridge, "I hope you stocked up for the weekend." "Help yourself," I said, watching him select an expensive bottle. "It's what family does, right?" Aaliyah shot me a sharp look but said nothing. The evening progressed exactly as I'd expected. Bruce dominated the conversation with tales of his latest business ventures, while Trisha fussed over everyone's plates. Roberto remained glued to his phone, occasionally rolling his eyes at his parents' attempts to engage him. "Put that away," Bruce snapped at his son. "We're here for family time." "Whatever," Roberto muttered, but tucked the phone away. His eyes met mine across the table, and I saw a flash of understanding there that made me uncomfortable. After dinner, I escaped to the back deck, needing air. The sound of waves in the distance usually calmed me, but tonight they seemed to echo my turbulent thoughts. "Mom's driving me crazy," Nigel's voice came from behind me. "I'm sorry about all this." "Are you?" I turned to face him. "Sorry about what exactly?" He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I heard you and Mom at dinner the other night. At the restaurant. Eavesdropping now?" "The waiter told me you seemed upset." He ran his hands through his hair again. "Luce, I know I messed up, but they're still family." "Family?" I laughed quietly. "Is that what you told yourself when you were transferring my money to their accounts? That family makes it okay?" Inside, I could hear Aaliyah directing Bruce on where to put their bags. Still controlling everything, still acting like she owned the place. "Please," Nigel's voice cracked. "I'll do anything to make this right. I've been looking for better jobs, trying to figure out how to pay you back." "Mom," Roberto appeared in the doorway, interrupting Nigel's plea. "Dad's being a jerk again. Can I hang out here?" I nodded, grateful for the interruption. Roberto settled into one of the deck chairs, pulling out a sketchbook. "You draw?" I asked, noticing the detailed landscapes on the pages. "Yeah. Dad thinks it's a waste of time," he shrugged. "Says I should focus on business classes instead." "Like the business classes he took before losing all that money?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. Roberto's head snapped up, his eyes narrowing. "What do you mean?" Nigel stepped forward quickly. "Nothing. He means nothing by it." "No. What did you mean?" Roberto pressed, looking at me. "Is that why you guys suddenly had money for that stupid car Dad bought?" "Roberto," Nigel started, but was cut off by Bruce's booming voice from inside. "Son, get in here and help your mother unpack." Roberto slammed his sketchbook shut. "I'm not deaf," he shouted back, but stood to go inside. At the door, he paused. "Thanks for letting me hide out here." After he left, Nigel turned to me. "Please don't drag him into this." "Into what?" I asked innocently. "The family business of taking what isn't yours." Through the window, I could see Aaliyah arranging her things in the master bedroom, my bedroom, as if she owned the place. Tomorrow she'd learn just how temporary her claim to this space was. "I hear them, you know," I said quietly. "When they think I'm not listening. Your mother planning more trips, Bruce talking about expanding his business, all while my grandmother's money sits in their accounts." "I'll talk to them again," Nigel promised. "Make them understand." "Understand what? That actions have consequences." I checked my phone, a message from Rachel confirming tomorrow's timeline. "Don't worry, Nigel, they'll understand soon enough." Inside, I could hear Aaliyah calling everyone to the living room for coffee and dessert, playing the perfect hostess in a house that wouldn't be here tomorrow. "Coming?" Nigel asked, holding the door. I smiled, thinking of the documents in my overnight bag upstairs. Of course. We wouldn't want to miss family time. The night was young and tomorrow promised to be unforgettable. The doorbell rang at exactly 9 a.m. I'd been watching the clock, counting down the minutes, my hands wrapped around a coffee mug that had long gone cold. "Who could that be?" Aaliyah asked from her perch on the sofa where she'd been planning yet another family vacation on her iPad. "I'll get it," I said, standing before Nigel could move. Rachel stood on the doorstep with the new owners, exactly as planned. "Good morning, Lucille. We're here for the final walkthrough and key handover." The silence behind me was deafening. "I'm sorry," Aaliyah's voice cut through the tension. "Key handover?" "Yes." I turned to face the family, all frozen in various states of confusion. "I sold the house. The new owners take possession today." Bruce was the first to recover. "This is a joke, right? Like the joke of stealing my inheritance?" I pulled the stack of bank statements from my bag. "Or maybe like the joke of using my grandmother's money to fund your failed business ventures." "Lucille," Nigel stepped forward, his face pale. "What have you done?" "What have I done?" I laughed, the sound sharp and cold. "I've simply followed the family tradition of taking what isn't mine." "Oh, wait, no, this house was actually mine to sell." Trisha clutched her coffee cup, looking between me and Nigel. "I don't understand. We just got here. And now you're leaving." I turned to Rachel and the new owners. "Please come in. Don't mind my soon-to-be ex-family. They were just packing." "Ex-family?" Aaliyah stood, her face flushed with anger. "How dare you? After everything we've done for you." "Everything you've done?" I threw the bank statements onto the coffee table. "You mean like spending my grandmother's life savings on your luxury vacations? Or helping Bruce buy his Mercedes? Please tell me more about everything you've done for me." Roberto picked up one of the statements, his eyes widening as he read. "Dad, is this true? Is this where the money for your new car came from?" Bruce snatched the paper from his hands. "Stay out of this, Roberto." "Why?" I asked. "Afraid he'll learn the family business too early? Stealing, lying, betraying trust?" "That's enough!" Nigel shouted, making everyone jump. "This is cruel, Lucille. Even for what we did, this is cruel." "Cruel?" I turned to him slowly. "Was it cruel when you watched your mother spend my inheritance on first-class flights? Was it cruel when you helped Bruce hide his transfers? Or did cruelty only start mattering when you got caught?" The new owners shifted uncomfortably by the door. Rachel cleared her throat. "Perhaps we should come back." "No need," I said firmly. "The house needs to be vacated today. Those were the terms of sale." "You can't do this," Aaliyah hissed, her perfect composure finally cracking. "We'll fight this." "With what? The money you stole from me?" I smiled. "Go ahead. I have all the documentation right here. Should we call the police? Discuss fraud charges?" Trisha started crying, while Bruce cursed under his breath and began gathering their things. Roberto stood apart from them all, still holding one of the bank statements, his face a mask of disgust. "I knew something was wrong," he said quietly. "All those sudden gifts, the trips. I knew we couldn't afford it." "Roberto, go pack your things," Bruce ordered. "No." Roberto looked at his father. You're no better than the guys who scammed Grandpa out of his retirement. You're worse, because you did it to family. Aaliyah gasped. How dare you speak to your father that way? How dare you steal from Lucille? Roberto shot back. I watched as they all began to unravel. Trisha crying harder, Bruce and Roberto arguing, Aaliyah trying to maintain control of a situation long past controlling. Only Nigel remained silent, staring at the floor. The movers will be here in an hour, I announced. I suggest you all be gone by then. Lucille, Nigel finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper. Please, we can work this out. I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in weeks. The man I'd loved, who I'd trusted with everything, who had betrayed me so completely. No, I said softly. We really can't. As they gathered their belongings, amid tears and accusations and slammed doors, Roberto paused beside me. I'm sorry, he said, for what they did, for what we took from you. I touched his shoulder gently. You didn't take anything, Roberto. Don't carry their guilt. He nodded, then followed his parents out the door. Rachel and the new owners began their walkthrough as the cars pulled away. I stood on the front porch, watching them disappear down the drive, feeling strangely empty. My phone buzzed. A message from Sandra. Is it done? I looked at the house that was no longer mine, at the family that was driving away, at the life I'd just blown apart. Yes, I typed back. It's done. But as I watched Nigel's car disappear around the bend, I wondered if anything was really finished at all. The cafe was nearly empty when Nigel found me 3 days later. I'd been expecting him. The dozens of missed calls and messages had made that inevitable. You look terrible, I said as he slid into the booth across from me. The dark circles under his eyes matched the wrinkled state of his usually pristine shirt. Mom's in the hospital, he said without preamble. Anxiety attack. The doctors say stress triggered it. I stirred my coffee slowly. Is that supposed to make me feel guilty? No. He rubbed his face. I don't know. Everything's falling apart, Luce. Bruce's wife left him, took Roberto with her. Mum's a mess. And He trailed off. And you what? I set my spoon down. Finally have to face consequences. The waitress approached, but one look at our faces sent her retreating. I never meant for any of this to happen, he said. Mum was in trouble with her mortgage, and she was crying, and I thought I could fix it. Take a little money, pay it back before you noticed. But you didn't stop at a little, did you? He shook his head. Once they knew about the money, it was like a switch flipped. Every problem became an emergency. Every want became a need. And I was trapped. You could have told me. Could I? He leaned forward. You're the successful one, the smart one. I was already the failure who couldn't match your salary. How could I admit I'd betrayed you too? A laugh escaped me, bitter and sharp. So you betrayed me more to avoid admitting you'd betrayed me? That's some logic, Nigel. I know. His voice cracked. I know it makes no sense, but I've lost everything now. You, the respect of my nephew, my family's trust. Even Mom won't look me in the eye anymore. Outside, rain began to fall, matching the mood. A text lit up my phone, Sandra asking if I was okay. I ignored it. Roberto called me yesterday, I said, watching Nigel's reaction. Did you know he's applying to art school? Surprise flickered across his face. What? But Bruce would never... Bruce doesn't get a say anymore. Trisha's supporting Roberto's choice. I took a sip of coffee. Funny how truth can set people free. Is that what this was about? Setting people free? No. I met his eyes. This was about justice, about consequences, about showing your family they can't just take what they want without paying a price. He was quiet for a long moment. And what about us? What's the price for what we had? Had, I emphasized. Past tense. Lucille, please. He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. I'll do anything to make this right. I've been looking at jobs in other cities, places where we could start fresh. Stop. I held up my hand. Just stop. Do you really think I could ever trust you again? Sleep next to you, share a life with you, knowing what you did. The rain grew heavier, drumming against the windows. A few tables away, an elderly couple shared a piece of pie, feeding each other bites and laughing softly. "I love you," he whispered. "Doesn't that count for anything? Love without trust is just another way to get hurt." I stood, gathering my purse. "Your mother will be fine. She's tougher than she lets on. Bruce will either learn from this or he won't. That's his choice. And you." I paused, looking at the man I'd once planned to grow old with. "You need to figure out who you are without your family's expectations crushing you." "And what about you?" His voice was barely audible above the rain. "Who are you without me?" I smiled, thinking of my grandmother's strength, of Roberto's courage to choose his own path, of Sandra's unwavering friendship. "I'm someone who finally understands that sometimes love isn't enough. That trust, once broken, leaves scars that no amount of apologies can heal." "So that's it?" He looked up at me, eyes glistening. 8 years together, just gone?" "No." I pulled out my wallet, leaving money for my coffee. 8 years gone the moment you chose your family's greed over our future. Today is just me finally accepting that truth. As I walked toward the door, he called out one last time. "What do I tell them? The family?" I turned back, rain framing the window behind me. "Tell them thank you for teaching me that sometimes the people who hurt you most are the ones who claim to love you best." Outside, the rain soaked through my jacket, but I didn't rush to my car. Instead, I stood there, letting the water wash over me, feeling lighter than I had in months. My phone buzzed again. Sandra. "Wine and pizza at my place tonight?" This time I replied, "Yes, I think it's time to start new traditions." Behind me, through the cafe window, I could see Nigel with his head in his hands. But for the first time since this all began, I felt no urge to look back. Sandra's doorbell rang just as we were opening our second bottle of wine. Through the peephole, I saw Aaliyah standing there, perfectly coiffed, despite her recent hospital stay. "Don't answer it," I whispered, but Sandra was already opening the door. "We need to talk," Aaliyah announced, stepping inside uninvited. She looked smaller somehow, less intimidating without her usual entourage. Sandra glanced at me. "I'll give you two some privacy." "No," I said firmly. "Whatever she has to say, she can say it in front of you." Aaliyah perched on the edge of an armchair, her designer purse clutched tight in her lap. "The doctors say I should avoid stress, but I couldn't leave things like this." "Like what?" I took a deliberate sip of wine. "Like the mess you made stealing my inheritance?" "Like family torn apart," she snapped, then caught herself smoothing her skirt. "Nigel's devastated. Bruce's marriage is over. Even Roberto won't speak to us. Sounds like karma to me." "Is that what you wanted?" Her voice cracked. "To destroy everything?" Sandra shifted uncomfortably on the couch beside me, but I held my ground. "No, Aaliyah. That's what you wanted when you took my money. I just made sure everyone saw the truth." "The truth?" She laughed bitterly. "The truth is we were desperate. Bruce's business was failing. The bank was threatening foreclosure on my house. So you stole from me." I set my glass down hard. "Instead of asking for help, instead of being honest, you all conspired to take what wasn't yours. We're family. Family doesn't steal from family." I was standing now, years of hurt pouring out. "Family doesn't manipulate and lie and treat someone's inheritance like their personal piggy bank." The doorbell rang again. This time it was Roberto. "I tracked Mum's phone," he said, stepping inside. "Figured she'd come here." Aaliyah turned to him. "Roberto, darling?" "Don't." He held up his hand. "I'm not here for you. I came to thank Lucille." That stopped everyone short. Sandra quietly slipped into the kitchen, leaving us to our family drama. "Thank me?" I asked. "For what?" "For showing me what real strength looks like." He pulled out a folded paper from his jacket. "I got accepted to art school, full scholarship." Aaliyah gasped. "But your father's business is built on lies," Roberto cut in. "Just like everything else in this family, I'm done pretending." I watched Aaliyah's face crumple, years of careful control finally breaking. We were trying to protect our way of life. By stealing someone else's? Roberto shook his head. That's not protection, Grandma, that's theft. My phone buzzed. A text from Nigel. Mum's gone. Are you with her? He's worried about you, I told Aaliyah, showing her the message. He's always worried about me. She dabbed at her eyes with an expensive handkerchief. That's how we got here, isn't it? His need to fix everything, my need to maintain appearances. And my inheritance paid the price, I finished. Roberto sat on the arm of my chair. Mum's filing for divorce, says she's tired of Dad's schemes. Good for her, I said, meaning it. Aaliyah stood suddenly. I should go. The doctors said. Sit down, I interrupted. We're not done. She sank back into the chair, looking older than I'd ever seen her. You want to fix this? I asked. Really fix it? She nodded slowly. Then start with the truth. All of it. No more manipulation. No more pretense. The truth! She glanced at Roberto, then back to me. The truth is, I was jealous. Of your success, your independence, everything came so easily to you. Easy? I laughed. I worked 2 jobs through college. My grandmother saved for 30 years to leave me that inheritance. Nothing about it was easy. I know that now. She twisted the handkerchief in her hands. I know we can never repay what we took, not just the money, but the trust. No, I agreed. You can't. Roberto stood. But we can do better going forward. Be better. Sandra reappeared with fresh glasses of wine and a knowing look. Family's complicated, she said, handing them out. But secrets make it toxic. Aaliyah took a small sip. What do we do now? Now? I looked at Roberto's acceptance letter, at Aaliyah's trembling hands, at the mess we'd all made. Now we start over. With truth this time. My phone buzzed again. Nigel sending another worried message about his mother. Tell him I'm safe, Aaliyah said quietly. Tell him. Tell him I'm finally learning what family really means. Outside, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across Sandra's living room. Nothing was fixed, not really. But as I watched Roberto show his grandmother his portfolio, saw her genuine interest in his art for the first time, I realized that sometimes breaking things is the only way to rebuild them stronger. To new beginnings, Sandra raised her glass. To truth, Roberto added. To family, Aaliyah whispered. I lifted my glass thinking of my grandmother's wisdom. To consequences. The autumn breeze rustled through my grandmother's garden as I knelt to plant the last of her favourite roses. Sandra worked beside me, carefully arranging mulch around the new bushes. She would have loved this, Sandra said, sitting back on her heels, using the house sale money to restore her garden. It felt right. I brushed dirt from my hands. Better than letting it sit in a bank account like the inheritance did. The sound of a car pulling up made us both turn. Roberto stepped out carrying his portfolio and wearing a paint-splattered t-shirt. Sorry I'm late, he called out. Class ran over. You're just in time for lunch, I replied, leading them both inside. The kitchen still smelled like my grandmother's recipes, though now my attempts at her famous lasagna filled the oven. Mom wanted me to give you this, Roberto said, pulling an envelope from his bag as we settled around the kitchen table. Inside was a check, not for the full amount they'd taken, but significant nonetheless. She's been selling her jewellery, he explained. Says she doesn't need the reminders of who she used to be. Sandra examined the check. That's got to be at least 20 pieces from her collection. 23? A voice said from the doorway. We all turned to see Aaliyah standing there, looking different in simple slacks and a sweater. May I come in? I nodded, watching as she took in the kitchen's transformation. The fresh paint, the new herbs growing in the window, the life returning to my grandmother's space. Bruce called, she said, accepting the coffee Sandra offered. He's agreed to sell the Mercedes. Says he wants to contribute to making things right. And Nigel? I asked quietly. Starting his new job next week, teaching high school economics. She smiled slightly. Says he wants to help young people understand money better than he did. Roberto opened his portfolio, spreading his latest works across the table. Vibrant paintings captured moments of our family drama. Aaliyah in the hospital, Bruce standing alone in an empty house, me in the garden bringing life back to dead earth. "These are for my final project," he explained. "The professor says art should tell truth, even when it hurts." Speaking of truth, Aaliyah reached into her purse. "I found these while sorting through my things." She laid out old photographs. My grandmother at my college graduation, at family dinners, always watching, always wise. "She knew, you know," I said, touching one photo gently, "about the kind of people you all were. She told me to be careful, but I thought love would be enough." "Love without respect is just control," Sandra murmured, quoting my grandmother's favourite saying. The timer dinged, and I pulled the lasagna from the oven. It wasn't perfect. The edges were a bit too brown, the cheese not quite melted right, but it was honest work, my own attempt at carrying forward a legacy. "I've been thinking," Aaliyah said as I served the plates, "about what your grandmother taught you about money, about worth. I spent so long trying to appear valuable that I forgot how to actually be valuable." "That's why you took the inheritance?" Roberto asked. She nodded slowly. "It was never really about the money. It was about what it represented. Success, security, respect. All the things I thought I could buy." "But you can't," I said. "Those things have to be earned." "Like trust?" She met my eyes. "Like trust," I agreed. Sandra raised her glass. "To earning things honestly." "To Grandma's garden," Roberto added. "To new growth," Aaliyah whispered. I looked around the table, at Sandra's unwavering friendship, at Roberto's brave new path, at Aaliyah's humble attempts at redemption. The inheritance was gone, but something else had grown in its place. Understanding, perhaps. Or wisdom. My phone lit up with a text from Nigel. "The divorce papers are final. Thank you for teaching me about consequences." I showed the message to Sandra, who squeezed my hand. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said, realizing I meant it. "Some things have to break before they can heal properly." Roberto looked up from his plate. "Like bones?" "Like trust," Aaliyah answered softly. "Like family." Outside, the roses caught the afternoon light, their new blooms promising future gardens, future growth. My grandmother had always said that money was like water. It could nourish growth or drown you depending on how you used it. "I have something else for you," Aaliyah said, pulling out another envelope. "Your grandmother's recipes. I found them in Nigel's things. They belong here with you." I opened the envelope, recognizing the familiar handwriting. At the bottom of each recipe, my grandmother had written little notes, wisdom disguised as cooking tips. "Remember," I read aloud from the lasagna recipe, "the secret ingredient isn't in the sauce. It's in the love you put into making it right." Sandra laughed. She always did have a way of making everything a life lesson. "She still does," I said, looking around at my imperfect healing family. "She still does."
I stood in the corner of the banquet hall, watching my father's retirement party unfold like a carefully orchestrated performance, where I was the only one who hadn't received the script. The champagne in my glass had gone flat an hour ago, much like my enthusiasm for this entire evening. My name is Soleil, and I've spent 28 years trying to live up to impossible expectations. Tonight was supposed to be different. I'd even worn the pearl earrings my father had given me for my 16th birthday, hoping they might serve as some kind of peace offering. "There you are!" Paige's voice cut through the ambient chatter, sharp as a knife. My stepmother glided toward me in her designer dress, perfect makeup, and that practiced smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Darling, you really should mingle. Standing alone in corners isn't exactly helping your image." "I was just taking a break," I said, forcing a smile. "It's been a long evening." "It's barely 9, sweetie." She adjusted my collar without asking, her red nails grazing my neck. "Your father's colleagues keep asking about you. The least you could do is make an appearance." Before I could respond, my half-brother Alex appeared beside us. "Mom, Dad's looking for you. Something about a speech?" Paige's eyes lit up. "Oh, of course. Fletcher always needs my help with these things." She hurried away, leaving behind a cloud of expensive perfume. Alex squeezed my shoulder. You okay? I'm fine, I lied, just wondering how much longer I need to stay to maintain the facade of the perfect family. Soleil. He started, but was interrupted by the clinking of glass. My father stood at the center of the room, arm around Paige, looking every bit the successful businessman about to embark on his well-earned retirement. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight, he began, his voice carrying across the room. 40 years at Phillips & Associates, and I couldn't have done it without the support of my beautiful wife, Paige. I took another sip of flat champagne, trying to ignore the familiar ache in my chest. No mention of Mom, of course. No mention of how she'd raised me alone for years while he built his empire. As the crowd dispersed after the speech, I made my way to the restroom, needing a moment alone. But as I approached, I heard voices around the corner. Just like her mother, Paige was saying to someone. Fletcher tried his best, but you can't fix what's fundamentally broken. The girl's been nothing but a disappointment since day one. I froze, my hand gripping the wall for support. That seems harsh, another voice responded. I recognized it as my Aunt Carol's. Soleil seems to be doing well for herself. Please, Paige scoffed. She's 28, single, and still trying to make it as a writer. If it weren't for Fletcher's monthly checks, she'd be living in a cardboard box. My face burned. Those monthly checks were my inheritance from my grandmother, which my father managed. Something Paige knew very well. I just wish Fletcher could see that all his efforts to help her were wasted, Paige continued. Some people just aren't worth the investment. I backed away, bumping into a waiter who nearly dropped his tray of drinks. Mumbling an apology, I rushed toward the exit but crashed straight into my father. Leaving already? He frowned, straightening his tie. The party's barely started. I'm not feeling well, I managed to say. You never are when it comes to family obligations, he sighed. Your mother was the same way, always running when things got uncomfortable. The comparison to my mother, intended as an insult, felt like a lifeline in that moment. Maybe she had the right idea, I said, meeting his eyes. His expression hardened. Don't start, Soleil. Not tonight. When then, Dad? When is it okay to talk about Mom? When is it okay to be anything other than grateful for your generosity and Paige's guidance? You're making a scene, he warned, glancing around. No, I'm making an exit. I pulled the pearl earrings off and pressed them into his hand. Congratulations on your retirement. I'm sure Paige will help you enjoy every minute of it. As I walked away, I heard Paige's voice behind me. Fletcher, darling, is everything okay? I didn't stay to hear his response. Instead, I pushed through the heavy doors into the cool night air, my hands shaking as I dug for my phone. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I'd been avoiding for years. Mom? My voice cracked as she answered. I think it's time we talked. 2 days after the retirement party disaster, I sat across from my mother at a quiet cafe, studying the face I hadn't seen in person for 15 years. Melina looked different from my memories. Her dark hair now streaked with silver, laugh lines around her eyes deeper, but her smile was exactly as I remembered. I can't believe you're actually here, she said, wrapping her hands around her coffee mug. I've driven past your apartment so many times, wanting to knock. Why didn't you? The question came out sharper than I intended. Because I promised your father I wouldn't interfere. She reached into her bag and pulled out a thick envelope. But I think it's time you knew the truth. What's that? Letters, dozens of them. I wrote to you every week for the first year after I left. She pushed the envelope across the table. Letters that were supposedly delivered but never answered. My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. Inside were letters, their pages yellowed with age, each one dated and addressed to me at my father's house. I don't understand, I said. I never received these. I know that now. Melina's voice hardened. Paige made sure of it. What do you mean? Last year, I ran into Maria. You remember her? She was our housekeeper before Paige fired her. Melina leaned forward. She told me something interesting. She used to see Paige collecting mail before anyone else got to it. Specifically, she remembered seeing her throw away letters with my handwriting. The coffee in my stomach turned to acid. That's why you stopped trying to contact me? No, sweetheart. I never stopped. She pulled out her phone, scrolling through photos. Here's your graduation announcement. Your first published article. That writing award you won last year. I followed everything you've done. How? Your cousin Natalia. She's kept me updated, sent me pictures. She paused. I know I should have tried harder to reach you directly, but Paige had convinced your father that I was unstable, that contact with me would be harmful to you. Dad believed her? I whispered, though I already knew the answer. Of course he had. He'd believed everything Paige ever said about me, about Mom, about anyone who threatened her perfect family narrative. Paige is very good at what she does, Melina said carefully. She started planting seeds of doubt long before I left, suggesting I was depressed, unstable, potentially dangerous. When I finally confronted her about it, she gave me an ultimatum. What kind of ultimatum? Leave voluntarily, or she'd make sure I lost custody completely. She had evidence, fabricated of course, of my unstable behavior, witnesses willing to testify. Your father's money behind her. Melina's eyes filled with tears. I thought if I left quietly, I could fight it from outside, prove myself stable and responsible. I never imagined she'd manage to cut off all contact. My phone buzzed, a text from Alex. Where are you? Dad's freaking out about the earrings thing. I ignored it. Why are you telling me this now? Because you're ready to hear it, and because I have proof. She pulled out another envelope, this one containing what looked like legal documents. Your Uncle Sylvester, he's a lawyer now, he helped me gather evidence. Bank records showing payments to false witnesses. Emails between Paige and her friends coordinating their stories. Even a confession from one of them who felt guilty after all these years. I stared at the documents, my vision blurring. All this time, all these years of thinking you abandoned me. I know, baby, I'm so sorry. She reached across the table, taking my hand. I should have fought harder. No, I said, squeezing her hand. You did fight. Paige just made sure we never knew about it. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Paige. Your father is very disappointed in your behavior. Call him immediately. A cold clarity settled over me. Mom, I need your help with something. Anything. These letters, the evidence, would you be willing to share them? All of it? She studied my face. What are you thinking? I'm thinking it's time everyone knew the truth about Paige. Not just what she did to you, but everything. The manipulation, the lies, all of it. I straightened in my chair. But I need to be smart about it. Strategic. You sound like your uncle, she smiled. He always says timing is everything in cases like this. Then let's talk to him. I stood up, gathering the letters and documents. I'm done letting Paige write our family's story. As we left the cafe, my phone buzzed one final time. A message from Natalia. Heard you finally met with Aunt Melina. Ready to raise some hell, cousin? For the first time in days, I smiled. Hell wasn't just about to be raised. It was about to be orchestrated. Uncle Sylvester's office smelled like leather and coffee, and the wall of law books behind his desk made the perfect backdrop for our impromptu war council. Natalia perched on the edge of his desk, while Mom and I sat in the visitors' chairs, spreading out our evidence. This is quite the collection, Sylvester said, adjusting his reading glasses. Bank statements, emails, witness statements. Paige wasn't as careful as she thought. People like her never are, Natalia chimed in. They get cocky. I picked up one of Mom's old letters. It's paper thin with age. I want to confront Dad with this. Today. Whoa, slow down. Sylvester held up his hand. Timing is crucial here. Your father's been under Paige's influence for decades. If we don't handle this right, he'll dismiss everything as a fabrication. The door opened, and Alex stepped in, making everyone jump. Sorry I'm late, he said, closing the door behind him. Had to make sure Mom didn't follow me. Alex? I stood up. What are you doing here? Natalia called me. He shrugged, looking uncomfortable in his suit and tie. Said it was time to pick a side. Natalia grinned. Told you he wasn't as blind as he pretends to be. Alex walked over to the desk, picking up one of the documents. I've suspected something was off for years. The way Paige, always controlled the narrative. The way she'd intercept mail and screen calls. He looked at me. Remember when your college acceptance letters mysteriously got lost in the mail? That was her. Found them in her desk drawer while looking for stamps. He sat down heavily. I should have told you then, but she's your mother, I finished. I get it. She's also a manipulative liar who destroyed my sister's relationship with her mother, he said firmly. That matters more. Sylvester cleared his throat. Alex's involvement changes things. We now have an inside perspective that could be crucial. More than that, Alex added. I have access to her computer. She's not as tech-savvy as she thinks. Found some interesting emails between her and her friend Sandra about their story alignment regarding Melina's departure. Mom's hands trembled as she reached for her coffee. Sandra was one of the witnesses who claimed I was unstable. Got those emails right here. Alex pulled out a USB drive, along with some interesting financial records I found while helping Dad with tax preparation. Sylvester plugged in the drive, scanning the contents. This is excellent, but we still need to be strategic about the reveal. Dad's hosting a family dinner next weekend, Alex said. Celebrating his first week of retirement. Everyone will be there. Natalia's eyes lit up. Perfect timing. Public enough to prevent a cover-up, private enough to maintain dignity. I don't care about dignity, I snapped. I care about justice. Justice without strategy is just revenge, Sylvester said quietly, and revenge has a way of backfiring. My phone buzzed. Another message from Paige. Family dinner next Saturday. Wear something appropriate. We need to discuss your recent behavior. She's planning something too, I said, showing them the message. She won't let the retirement party incident go unanswered. Then we'll be ready, Mom said, her voice stronger than I'd heard it all day. All of us. I should head back. Alex stood up. Dad's expecting me for lunch. But first... He pulled out his phone, scrolling through photos until he found what he wanted. Remember that antique box Paige keeps in her closet? The one no one's allowed to touch? We gathered around his phone. The photo showed a collection of letters, cards, and what looked like birthday checks, all addressed to me. There's more. He swiped to another photo. College fund statements. Looks like Grandma left you way more than what Dad's been giving you monthly. The room went silent. Even Natalia looked shocked. That's theft, Sylvester said finally. Clear and documented theft. I gripped the edge of the desk, my knuckles white. All these years of her calling me a financial burden. While she was literally stealing your inheritance, Natalia finished. That's going to play really well at dinner. Alex headed for the door, pausing with his hand on the knob. Sis? For what it's worth, I'm sorry it took me so long to step up. You're here now, I said. That's what matters. After he left, Sylvester began organizing the documents into folders. 1 week to prepare. We'll need every minute. What do we do first? I asked. First, he smiled grimly, we make copies. Lots of copies. Then we plan exactly how this story's going to unfold. I looked at the evidence spread across his desk. Years of lies and manipulation reduced to paper and pixels. Paige always said I was just like my mother. You are, Natalia grinned. You're both fighters, and this time you're fighting back together. The day before the family dinner, I met Dad for coffee at his request. He chose the same cafe where I'd reunited with Mom, though he didn't know that. He was already there when I arrived, looking oddly diminished without his usual business suit. You're late, he said, pushing a cappuccino toward me. Traffic. I sat down, noting the dark circles under his eyes. You wanted to talk? Paige is worried about you. He stirred his coffee unnecessarily. She says you've been avoiding her calls. I've been busy. Too busy to return any of my calls either? He leaned forward. What's going on with you lately, Soleil? First the scene at my retirement party, now this distance. Maybe I'm just tired of pretending, I said, watching his reaction carefully. Of acting like everything's fine when it's not. He frowned. What's that supposed to mean? Did you ever wonder why Mom really left? His face hardened. We're not discussing your mother. Why not? Because Paige said so? I pulled out one of Mom's old letters. Not the original, but a copy. Did you know about these? He stared at the letter, recognition flickering across his face. Where did you get that? From Mom. There are dozens more. Letters she wrote to me that I never received. Want to guess why? Your mother abandoned us, he said, but his voice lacked its usual conviction. She was unstable. According to who? Paige? Her carefully coached friends? I pulled out another document, a bank statement showing payments to Sandra. Did you know your wife was paying people to lie about Mom's mental state? He grabbed the paper, scanning it with widening eyes. This could be fake. It's not, and there's more. So much more, Dad. I leaned forward, including proof that Paige has been stealing from my inheritance. The color drained from his face. What? Ask her about the antique box in her closet. Ask her about Grandma's college fund. I stood up. Or, better yet, come to dinner tomorrow and see all the evidence for yourself. Sit down, he said sharply. You can't just drop something like this and walk away. Why not? Isn't that what everyone's been doing to me my whole life? Dropping bombs and walking away? I grabbed my bag. For once, Dad, try looking at the evidence instead of just believing what Paige tells you. My phone buzzed, a text from Alex. Mom's going through your old room, looking for something specific. Seems panicked. I showed Dad the message. Looks like someone's getting nervous. He stared at the phone, then at the documents, then back at me. I need time to process this. You've had 20 years to process the truth. You just chose not to see it. I headed for the door, then turned back. Oh, and Dad? Maybe ask Paige about Maria, our old housekeeper. She has some interesting stories to tell. I left him sitting there, staring into his coffee cup. Outside, Natalia was waiting in her car. How'd it go? She asked as I climbed in. Phase 1 complete. He's rattled. I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from Paige already. Alex says she's searching my old room. Probably looking for anything she might have missed. Any evidence she didn't destroy. Natalia pulled into traffic. Uncle Sylvester's got Maria ready to go for tomorrow. She'll be there right after the main course. Perfect timing for dessert, I said grimly. How's Mom holding up? Nervous but ready. She and Sylvester are finalizing everything now. She glanced at me. You sure you want to go through with this? It's going to get ugly. It's been ugly for 20 years. At least now it'll be honest. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from Dad. We need to talk more about this. Soon. He's cracking, Natalia observed. Paige must be losing her mind right now, watching her perfect world unravel. We pulled up to my apartment, but I didn't get out immediately. What if we're wrong? What if this backfires? Then we'll deal with it. Natalia squeezed my hand. But we're not wrong. Alex has the proof. Maria has the testimony. Mom has the letters. And you? She smiled. You have the truth on your side. Truth isn't always enough. No, but combined with bank fraud, witness tampering, and documented theft? She raised an eyebrow. That's more than enough. My phone lit up with another text, this one from Alex. Found something interesting in Mom's shredder. Bringing it tomorrow. Get ready. Looks like the universe is on our side, Natalia said. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be one hell of a family dinner. I stepped out of the car, clutching my bag of evidence. 24 hours until everything changed. 24 hours until the truth finally came to dinner. The dining room felt smaller than I remembered, crowded with tension and unspoken words. Paige had outdone herself with the table setting, her best china, crystal glasses, and fresh flowers arranged just so. A perfect facade, just like everything else about her. Wine, darling? She held the bottle over my glass, her smile tight. No thanks. I want to keep a clear head tonight. Her hand trembled slightly as she moved to fill Dad's glass instead. He hadn't looked directly at anyone since we'd arrived, focusing intently on his water glass, as if it held the secrets of the universe. Alex sat across from me, picking at his salad. Next to him, Natalia chatted cheerfully about nothing important, playing her part perfectly. Uncle Sylvester had texted that he was running late, all according to plan. So, Soleil, Paige set down the wine bottle with a little too much force. I heard you've been meeting with some interesting people lately. Have you been having me followed? I speared a cherry tomato. Don't be dramatic. I have friends who care about this family's well-being. Friends like Sandra? I watched her face carefully. How is she, by the way? Still doing well after those generous deposits you made to her account 20 years ago? The clatter of Dad's fork against his plate echoed through the room. I don't know what you're talking about, Paige said smoothly, but her knuckles were white around her napkin. Really? That's interesting because... The doorbell rang. I'll get it. Alex jumped up before Paige could move. Moments later, Maria walked in, followed by Uncle Sylvester. Our former housekeeper looked exactly as I remembered, short, sturdy, with kind eyes that had seen too much. What is she doing here? Paige stood up so quickly her chair scraped against the floor. Maria, Dad said softly, finally looking up. It's been a long time. Too long, Mr. Phillips. Maria clutched her handbag. I have something to say. This is a private family dinner, Paige snapped. You need to leave. Actually, Sylvester stepped forward, Maria is here as a witness. She has some very interesting things to share about her time working in this house. Witness? Paige laughed, but it sounded hollow. This is ridiculous. Fletcher, do something. Dad didn't move. Let her speak. Maria took a deep breath. I saw you, Mrs. Phillips, every morning for years, going through the mail before anyone else woke up, taking letters addressed to Soleil, burning them in the garden. That's absurd, Paige sputtered. Fletcher, you can't believe... I kept one, Maria continued, opening her bag. Just one, because the envelope was so pretty, with pressed flowers drawn on it. I felt guilty for years about not giving it to Soleil, but I was afraid of losing my job. She pulled out a faded envelope. It's a birthday card from her mother. The room went silent. Dad reached for the envelope with shaking hands. While we're sharing, Alex stood up, pulling papers from his jacket. I found these in the shredder last night. Didn't have time to piece them all together, but the bank letterhead is pretty clear. Something about a trust fund? You went through my private papers? Paige's voice rose an octave. Like you went through my room yesterday? I countered. Looking for evidence you might have missed? I don't have to listen to this. Paige pushed back from the table. Fletcher, we're leaving. Sit down, Paige. Dad's voice was quiet, but firm. I want to hear the rest. The rest? She laughed hysterically. There is no rest. This is obviously a coordinated attack on me, on our family. Our family? I stood up slowly. You mean the family you created by destroying mine? By paying people to lie about my mother? By stealing my inheritance? Everything I did was for this family. No, a new voice said from the doorway. Everything you did was for yourself. Mom stood there, looking elegant and composed, with more documents in her hands. Paige's face went from red to white. You can't be here. The restraining order expired 15 years ago, Sylvester cut in, and was based on false testimony anyway, as Sandra recently admitted in a sworn statement. Sandra would never. She did, I interrupted. Turns out guilt catches up with people eventually, just like karma. Fletcher! Paige turned to my father, her voice desperate. You can't believe these lies. After everything we've built. Built on what, Paige? He finally met her eyes. On manipulation? Theft? Destroying evidence? He held up the birthday card from Mom. On keeping a child from her mother? The perfect facade finally cracked. Paige's face contorted with rage as she grabbed her wine glass and hurled it against the wall, red liquid streaming down the expensive wallpaper like blood. You want the truth? She screamed. Fine. Let's tell the truth. All of it. Alex caught my eye and nodded slightly. Everything was falling into place, exactly as planned. The real show was about to begin. The truth? Paige paced the dining room like a caged animal. The truth is, I saved this family. Your precious Melina was weak, pathetic, always crying about her art and her dreams, while Fletcher worked himself to death. That's not true. Mom stepped fully into the room. I supported Fletcher's career. I raised our daughter while he built his business. You were holding him back. Paige whirled around. I saw his potential. I knew what he could become with the right guidance. You mean with the right manipulation? I said. Tell them about Sandra, Paige. Tell them how you orchestrated the whole thing. She laughed, high and brittle. Sandra was easy. They were all easy. A few $1,000s here, a promised promotion there. People will say anything if you make it worth their while. Dad's face had gone ashen. You paid people to lie about Melina's mental state? I created a narrative that would hold up in court, Paige snapped. One that would let you focus on your career without her emotional baggage dragging you down. And the letters? I pressed. The inheritance? You want to talk about money? She stormed over to the sideboard, yanking open a drawer. Fine. Here are your precious trust fund statements. Yes, I redirected some of it. Someone had to manage your grandmother's ridiculous generosity. Alex picked up one of the statements. Mom, this is fraud. It's family financial management, she turned to Dad. Everything I did, every single thing, was to protect what we built. This house, your career, our reputation, I crafted it all. By destroying evidence? Sylvester stepped forward. By intercepting mail? That's a federal offense, Paige. Oh, please, a few birthday cards, some tearful letters. I was protecting Soleil from her mother's instability. No. Mom's voice cut through the room like steel. You were protecting yourself, Maria, show them. Maria pulled out a small notebook. I kept a diary of everything I saw, dates, times, what Mrs. Phillips did with the mail, who came to the house when Mr. Phillips was away. You spied on me? Paige's voice shook. You were nothing but a servant. I was a witness, Maria said quietly, and I saw how you planned it all, step by step. The fake witnesses, the concerned phone calls to Mr. Phillips about his wife's behavior, the way you isolated Ms. Melina from her friends. It wasn't just Mom, was it? I stepped closer to Paige. Tell them about my college acceptance letters, about the job offers you intercepted. You weren't ready. She grabbed the edge of the sideboard. You're still not ready. Just like your mother, always wanting more than you deserve. Deserve? Dad stood up slowly. What my daughter deserves is her inheritance. What she deserved was a relationship with her mother. What she deserved was the truth. The truth? Paige laughed again, but tears were streaming down her face now. The truth is I made you successful. I made this family what it is, without me. Without you, Alex interrupted. We might have been an actual family instead of this performance. You ungrateful... She lunged for the documents in his hands, but Sylvester stepped between them. I wouldn't, he said calmly. These are copies anyway. The originals are safe with my office, along with Sandra's sworn statement, Maria's diary entries, and evidence of your financial fraud. You can't prove anything. Actually, Alex pulled out his phone. We can. I recorded everything you just said, about paying witnesses, redirecting funds, destroying mail. That's quite a confession, Mom. The fight seemed to drain out of her all at once. She sank into a chair, mascara running down her cheeks. Fletcher, please. Everything I did was for us. Dad walked over to Mom, taking her hand. No, Paige. Everything you did was for yourself. And now you're going to face the consequences. What are you going to do? She looked around wildly. Turn me in? Destroy our family's reputation? The reputation you built on lies? I picked up one of Mom's old letters. I think the truth will be refreshing. You'll regret this, she hissed. All of you. The only regret, Dad said quietly, is that I didn't see through you sooner. He turned to Sylvester. What do we do now? Now, my uncle smiled grimly. We take all of this to the authorities. Mail fraud, witness tampering, financial theft. The police will be very interested. Paige stood up shakily. I want my lawyer. Good idea, Sylvester nodded. You're going to need one. As if on cue, the doorbell rang again. This time, when Alex opened it, 2 police officers stepped into the foyer. Perfect timing, Natalia murmured, pulling out her phone to record what happened next. I watched as Paige's carefully constructed world crumbled around her, piece by perfect piece. The truth, as they say, will set you free. But first, it might just destroy everything you thought you knew. The police station's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across everyone's faces as we gave our statements. It was nearly midnight, and the events of the evening felt surreal, like a movie playing out in slow motion. "Just a few more questions, Ms. Phillips," Detective Rivera said, shuffling through her notes. "You said the financial manipulation began how long ago?" "At least 20 years, I replied, watching through the window as Paige sat in another room, her lawyer whispering urgently in her ear. "But we only discovered the full extent recently." "And the witness tampering?" "That started even earlier." Mom's voice was steady beside me. "Sandra's statement confirms it all." The detective nodded, making more notes. "The postal inspector will want to speak with you both tomorrow about the mail interference. That's a serious federal offense." Dad paced behind us, looking older than I'd ever seen him. I should have known. All those years I should have seen what was happening. "She was very good at what she did," Alex said from his corner. He hadn't stopped watching Paige through the window. "She had everyone fooled." Detective Rivera closed her notebook. "Based on the evidence you've provided and Mrs. Black's partial confession at the house, we'll be holding her overnight. The fraud division will take over in the morning." "What happens then?" I asked. "Given the extent of the crimes and the documentation you have, she's looking at serious charges. Mail fraud alone carries up to 20 years. A commotion erupted in the other room. Paige had stood up, shoving away her lawyer's restraining hand. "I want to talk to them." Her voice carried through the glass. "Fletcher! Soleil!" "Mrs. Black, I strongly advise against—" her lawyer started. "I don't care," she banged on the window. "Fletcher, you can't do this to me. Everything I did was for us." Dad turned away, his shoulders shaking. Mom reached for his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, he took it. "You should all go home," Detective Rivera said kindly. "We have your contact information. The fraud division will be in touch tomorrow." As we gathered our things, Paige's voice grew more hysterical. "Alex, tell them how I protected this family." Alex paused at the door. "Goodbye, Mom." His voice cracked on the last word. Outside, the night air felt clean and fresh after the stale police station atmosphere. Natalia was waiting in the parking lot with coffee and sandwiches. "Thought you might need these," she said, passing them around. "How did it go?" "About as well as could be expected," Sylvester answered, checking his phone. "The fraud division's already reviewing the financial documents. They're particularly interested in the trust fund manipulation." "What happens to the house?" Alex asked suddenly. "All the accounts?" "They'll be frozen pending investigation," Sylvester explained. "But anything that was illegally diverted should eventually be restored to its rightful owners." I turned to Dad. "Where will you stay?" "He's coming home with me," Mom said firmly. "We have a lot to talk about." Dad looked up, surprised. "Melina, Not tonight," she shook her head. "Tonight we all need rest. But soon." "I have a spare room," Alex offered. "If you'd prefer." Dad shook his head. "No, Melina's right. It's time for some honest conversations." A police car pulled out of the station's garage, Paige being transferred to the county jail. We all watched it disappear into the night. "It doesn't feel real," I said. "Oh, it's real." Natalia pulled out her phone. "Already trending on local social media. Prominent businessman's wife arrested for decades of fraud and manipulation." "Great," Alex groaned. "Just what we need." "Actually," Sylvester interjected, "public exposure might help prevent her from trying to spin this her way. The truth is already out there." Mom squeezed my hand. "Are you okay?" "I don't know," I admitted. "It feels like waking up from a very long nightmare." "For all of us," Dad said, quietly. He looked at Mom, then at me. "I know it's not enough, but I'm sorry. So incredibly sorry." "It's a start," I said. Alex checked his watch. I should go. Need to pack up some things from the house before they seal it for investigation. I'll help, Natalia offered. One by one, everyone departed until only Mom, Dad, and I remained in the parking lot. The three of us stood there, an awkward triangle of hurt and hope and possibility. Come on, Mom finally said. I'll make tea. We can start small. As we walked to our cars, I heard the faint wail of another siren in the distance. Somewhere in a county jail cell, Paige was facing her first night without control, without power, without her carefully constructed lies. And here we were, taking our first steps toward rebuilding what she had destroyed. It wouldn't be easy. Nothing worth having ever is. But at least now we had the truth. All of it. And that was somewhere to start. The autumn breeze rustled through Mom's garden as I helped her plant tulip bulbs. Dad sat on the porch, reading through old letters. He'd made it his mission to read every single one Mom had written, as if making up for lost time. These need to be deeper, Mom demonstrated, digging the hole a few inches further. They'll freeze otherwise. My phone buzzed, a message from Alex. Sentencing today. You coming? I can't, I typed back. Some things are more important. Mom caught me looking at the phone. Alex? Yeah. Paige's sentencing is today. Dad looked up from his letters. Are you sure you don't want to go? I'm exactly where I need to be. I pressed another bulb into the earth. Besides, Sylvester will handle everything. The screen door creaked as Natalia emerged with a tray of lemonade. Anyone thirsty? Also, your publisher called, Soleil. They're excited about the manuscript. I brushed dirt from my hands. They should be. Truth really is stranger than fiction. And more profitable, Natalia grinned. They're already talking about film rights. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, I said, but couldn't help smiling. The advance had already helped me move into a new apartment, one without Paige's financial strings attached. Dad set down his letters. I read the draft, last night. And? It's honest, painfully so. He joined us in the garden. I deserved every word. It's not about deserving, I said, accepting a glass of lemonade. It's about truth, all of it, the ugly parts, the healing parts. My phone buzzed again, this time from Sylvester. 15 years, no possibility of parole for 10, financial restitution ordered in full. I showed them the message. 15 years, Dad whispered. Justice, Mom said simply, patting the earth around another bulb. You know what I realized? I sat back on my heels, looking at the freshly planted garden. Paige was right about one thing. I am like my mother. Oh? Mom raised an eyebrow. Yeah, we're both fighters. We both believe in second chances. I glanced at Dad. And we both know how to plant something new in scorched earth. Dad's eyes welled up. I don't deserve— Stop, Mom interrupted. No more talk of deserving. We're here now, doing the work. That's what matters. Natalia's phone chimed. Alex says Paige asked to speak to him after the sentencing. Did he? No, says he's done letting her write his story. She smiled. He's heading over here, by the way, bringing pizza. I stood up, brushing dirt from my knees. You know what this garden needs? Those wind chimes you used to have, Mom. The ones that played different notes in the breeze. I haven't thought about those in years, she said softly. I have them, Dad said quietly. In my office. I kept them after you left. Couldn't bring myself to throw them away, even when Paige insisted. Well, Mom stood up, brushing off her hands. What are you waiting for? Go get them. As Dad hurried inside, I looked around at what we'd built from the ashes of Paige's destruction. A garden, slowly coming to life. A family, gradually healing. A truth, finally told. The tulips won't bloom until spring, Mom said, reading my thoughts. But that's okay. Some things are worth waiting for. Dad returned with the wind chimes, delicate tubes of metal and glass that caught the sunlight. Together, we hung them from the porch overhang, their gentle music filling the air. Alex's car pulled into the driveway, pizza boxes balanced in one hand, a bottle of wine in the other. Hope everyone likes pepperoni. Also, you'll never believe what Sandra told the judge at the sentencing. As we gathered on the porch, sharing pizza and stories, I realized something profound. Paige had spent decades crafting a perfect facade, but here we were, building something real from the rubble, something messy, and honest and true. The wind chimes tinkled in the breeze, their notes mixing with laughter and conversation. Mom and Dad sat close enough for their shoulders to touch, 2 decades of manipulation slowly dissolving between them. Alex told jokes that actually reached his eyes now. Natalia documented everything on her phone, for posterity, she claimed. And me? I watched it all, memorizing every detail for my next chapter, not just in the book, but in life. Because that's the thing about truth. Once it breaks free, it creates its own kind of beauty. Not the polished, perfect kind that Paige had manufactured, but something wild and real and unstoppable, like tulips pushing through winter earth, promising spring.
The crystal champagne flute shattered in my grip, sending shards across the marble floor of our family's grand foyer. Blood trickled down my palm, but I barely noticed the pain. My parents' voices drifted from Father's study, their words piercing me deeper than any broken glass could. The merger with Graham Industries depends on this marriage, Whitney. Trinity will do as she's told, just as she always has. I'm Trinity, and at 25 years old, I was still nothing more than a bargaining chip in my parents' endless game of social chess. Xander, darling, of course she will. My mother's voice dripped with honey. We've raised her to understand her responsibilities. The wedding will proceed as planned. My hand trembled as I pressed a silk napkin against the cut. The wedding they spoke of, my wedding, was news to me. But then again, most decisions about my life were made without my input. Trinity! Mother's sharp call made me jump. What's that awful noise? Come here at once! I quickly kicked the broken glass under a nearby console table and hurried to the study, hiding my bleeding hand behind my back. The heavy double doors opened to reveal my parents in their natural habitat. Father behind his mahogany desk, Mother perched on the leather chaise lounge like a bird of prey. There you are, darling, Mother said, her perfectly painted lips curving into a practiced smile. We have wonderful news. Father didn't even look up from his laptop. You'll be having dinner with Otis Graham tomorrow evening. Wear something appropriate. Otis Graham? My voice came out smaller than I intended. The CEO of Graham Industries. His son, dear, Mother corrected, rising to adjust my collar. He's only 28, quite handsome and very eligible. The perfect match. I stepped back from her touch. Match for what exactly? Don't be obtuse, Trinity, Father snapped, finally meeting my eyes. This merger could double our market share. The Grahams are old money, just like us. It's a natural alliance. Through marriage? I said flatly. My marriage. Mother waved her hand dismissively. Oh, don't be dramatic. This is how things are done in our circle. I met your father through a similar arrangement, and look how well that turned out. I glanced between them, my father, who treated his family like employees, and my mother, who turned manipulation into an art form. Yes, look how well indeed. And if I refuse? The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Father's fingers stopped typing. Refuse? Mother laughed, but her eyes were steel. Why would you refuse? This is the opportunity of a lifetime. The Grahams have 3 houses, a yacht, and connections throughout Europe. Otis is quite taken with your photos. My photos? Heat rushed to my face. You've been showing my pictures to strangers? Business associates, Father corrected. And yes, Otis was particularly impressed with your charity gala photographs. He appreciates a woman who understands social obligations. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Probably River, my best friend, and the only person who saw me as more than a corporate asset. I longed to answer it, to escape this suffocating room. I have plans tomorrow evening, I said quietly. Cancel them. Father's tone left no room for argument. The restaurant is already booked. 7 p.m. sharp at LeBlanc. Don't disappoint us, Trinity. I turned to leave, but Mother caught my arm. What happened to your hand, dear? Blood had seeped through the napkin, leaving crimson spots on the white silk. I broke a glass. Well, clean yourself up, she sighed, and do something about those dark circles under your eyes. We can't have you looking tired when you meet Otis. I fled the study, but not before hearing my father's final words to my mother. Call the wedding planner. I want everything arranged by next month. The fiscal quarter ends soon, and we need this merger locked down. In my room, I finally checked my phone. River had sent 3 messages. Hey, you okay? Trinity. Call me ASAP. I have an idea. I sank onto my bed, tears threatening to spill, my whole life reduced to a business transaction, a merger, a deal to be closed. Through blurry eyes, I typed back, I need help. They're trying to marry me off to a stranger. River's response was immediate. Pack a bag. Don't let them see you cry. I'm coming to get you tonight. I looked around my luxurious prison, at all the pretty things that had never quite made up for the lack of real love. My hand throbbed, but my heart beat faster with something new. Hope, or maybe it was fear. Either way, I knew tomorrow's dinner would never happen. I had other plans that would shatter more than just a champagne flute. The security cameras went dark at exactly 2 a.m. River had promised to handle it, though I never asked how. I crept down the servants' staircase, my heart thundering so loudly I feared it would wake the entire house. 1 backpack, that's all I allowed myself. Some clothes, essential documents, and the emergency cash I'd been secretly stashing for months. Going somewhere, miss. I froze. Martha, our housekeeper, stood at the bottom of the stairs. In her 30 years of service, she'd been more of a mother to me than Whitney ever was. Martha, The words stuck in my throat. She pressed a small envelope into my hands. Your mother's been planning your wedding all evening. The cake tasting is scheduled for next week. She paused, then pulled me into a tight hug. Be safe, Trinity. Be free. Tears pricked my eyes as I hugged her back. Thank you, I whispered. I never saw you, she said, disappearing into the darkness of the kitchen. My phone vibrated. Cars waiting at the gate. I slipped through the garden, staying in the shadows of the carefully manicured hedges. The iron gates loomed ahead, their security keypads blinking red instead of green. River had done her job well. A black sedan idled just beyond the gate, its engine a soft purr in the night. I squeezed through the gap we discovered years ago, a design flaw in the fence that my parents never knew about. Get in, River hissed from the driver's seat. I dove into the passenger side, my hands shaking so badly I could barely close the door. River pulled away smoothly, no squealing tires or dramatic acceleration, just a quiet disappearance into the night. Did anyone see you? She asked, keeping her eyes on the road. Just Martha. She won't tell. Good. River handed me a burner phone. Your regular phone? I pulled it from my pocket and rolled down the window. The expensive device sailed into a drainage ditch. Gone. Smart girl. There's a new ID and bank cards in the glove compartment. Reagan came through. Reagan, I asked, pulling out the envelope. Who's that? Someone who helps people like you. She's expecting us in Seattle. I stared at the driver's license in my hands. Same photo, different name. How did you arrange all this? River's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Let's just say I know what it's like to need an escape route. Reagan helped me once, too. The city lights faded behind us as we hit the highway. I kept expecting police sirens, my father's security team, something. But there was only the hum of tires on asphalt and the soft sound of River humming along to the radio. My phone would be trackable until the battery died, lying in that ditch. By the time they found it, we'd be hundreds of miles away. They'll look for me, I said quietly. Probably. But you're 25, Trinity. Legally, they can't do anything. I opened Martha's envelope. Inside was a letter and a small key. Dear Trinity, it read, this key opens a safety deposit box at First National Bank in Seattle, account number 2247. What's inside might help you start your new life. I've been saving for you since you were a little girl who cried about being forced into pageants. Your parents never knew. Be brave, dear one. Martha. Fresh tears spilled down my cheeks. River reached over and squeezed my hand. You okay? No, I admitted, but I will be. The sun was rising when River's phone chimed. She glanced at it and smiled. Reagan says your room is ready. We'll be there by tonight. What's she like? Tough. Fair. She runs a legitimate business consulting firm, but she has a soft spot for people running from toxic families. She'll help you find work, build a new life. I leaned back in my seat, watching the morning light paint the sky in shades of hope. My parents would be waking up soon. Mother would be furious when she discovered my empty bed. Father would be more concerned about the merger falling apart. River? Yeah? Thank you for everything. She smiled, her eyes still on the road ahead. That's what real family does. My phone would be discovered soon. The police might be called. But I wasn't a missing person. I was a woman choosing her own path for the first time in her life. I pulled out the new driver's license again. Trinity was gone. According to this, I was now Emma Parker, age 25, from Portland, Oregon. Emma, I whispered, trying the name on for size. It felt like freedom. River turned up the radio as we crossed the state line. Welcome to your new life, Emma. Behind us, the sun rose fully, burning away the last shadows of my old life. Ahead lay Seattle, Reagan, and a future that was finally, completely my own. Seattle greeted me with rain and the smell of coffee. After 3 weeks, I was starting to understand why River had chosen this city for my fresh start. The constant drizzle felt like it was washing away my old life, one drop at a time. You're holding the espresso machine wrong again, Reagan called from behind the counter of her cafe. Tamp the grounds firmly, but don't crush them. I readjusted my grip, trying to mirror her movements. The cafe was my cover job, the perfect place to learn how to blend in with regular people while I got my feet under me. The basement of the building housed Reagan's real business, helping people disappear and rebuild. Better, she nodded as I successfully pulled a shot. You're learning fast, Emma. The name still felt strange, but I was getting used to it, just like I was getting used to wearing jeans instead of designer dresses and having coffee stains on my apron instead of perfect manicures. The bell above the door chimed. Morning, boss, River walked in, shaking rain from her umbrella. She'd moved to Seattle 2 weeks after me, claiming a job transfer, but I knew she'd done it to keep an eye on me. Your usual? I asked, already reaching for the oat milk she preferred. Actually, we need to talk. Her serious tone made me pause. Privately. Reagan nodded toward the back office. Take 5, Emma. I'll cover the front. River closed the office door behind us and pulled out her tablet. Your parents made the news. My stomach dropped as she showed me the headline. Cooper Industries announces surprise merger delay. Stocks plummet. They're looking for you, River continued. Private investigators, social media campaigns, the works, they're spinning it as a mental health crisis, claiming you're unstable and need help. I laughed bitterly. Of course they are. Can't admit their perfect daughter just didn't want to be their puppet anymore. There's more. River swiped to another article. The Grahams are threatening to pull out completely. Your father's company is taking a hit. Good, I said, but my voice shook slightly. Despite everything, seeing my father's empire crumble didn't feel as satisfying as I'd imagined. A knock at the door made us both jump. Reagan entered, carrying 3 coffee mugs. Thought you might need these. Also, Martha called. Is she okay? I asked quickly. They didn't fire her, did they? She's fine. Smart woman, convinced your parents she had no idea about your plans, but she says they're getting desperate. Your mother's been drinking more than usual. I wrapped my hands around the warm mug, remembering all the times I'd found Mother with her special tea that smelled like vodka. What do they expect me to do? Just come running back? Actually, Reagan sat on the edge of her desk. This might be an opportunity. Martha accessed some files in your father's study. Apparently, the Graham merger isn't just about business. There are some questionable transactions that would be buried in the merger paperwork. Illegal transactions? I asked. Let's just say the SEC would be very interested. Reagan's eyes met mine. Your father's desperate because he needs this merger to cover his tracks. The implications hit me like a wave. All those years of being the perfect daughter, and my father had been breaking the law behind his mahogany desk. "I got something else," River added, pulling an envelope from her bag. "Remember that safety deposit box Martha told you about?" I nodded. I'd been too scared to visit the bank yet, afraid it might somehow lead my parents to me. I had my contact at the bank check it out. It's not just savings, Trinity, it's documentation, years of it. Martha kept records of everything she saw or heard in that house. My hands trembled as I took the envelope. Inside were copies of some of Martha's records. Dates, transactions, overhead conversations, all meticulously noted. "Martha wasn't just a housekeeper," Reagan said softly. "She was building you a safety net, and maybe now, some leverage." A notification popped up on River's tablet, an email from my mother's lawyer demanding information about my whereabouts. "They're not going to stop," I said, standing up, "but maybe it's time they learned what it feels like to be powerless." Reagan smiled, but her eyes were serious. "Revenge is a dangerous game, Emma. Are you sure you want to play it?" I thought about all the years of control, of being paraded around like a prize horse, of having my entire life planned without my consent. "I don't want revenge," I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice was. "I want justice, and now I have the power to get it." The cafe's morning rush bell rang, calling me back to work, back to my new life of simple pleasures and honest work. But now I had something else too, a way to ensure my parents could never force anyone else to live the life they'd planned for me. "Time to get back to work," I said, straightening my apron. "Those espresso shots won't pull themselves." But this time, as I returned to the counter, I was smiling. The game had changed, and for once I held all the cards. "Happy 6-month freedom anniversary!" River placed a cupcake with a single candle in front of me. The tiny flame flickered in the dim light of my small apartment, casting dancing shadows on the walls. "You're ridiculous," I laughed, but my heart swelled. These small celebrations meant more than all the elaborate parties my mother had ever thrown. Reagan raised her wine glass. "To Emma Parker, my best barista and most successful renovation project." "I'm not your project," I protested, but clinked glasses with her anyway. The cheap wine tasted better than any champagne I'd sipped in my father's study. My phone buzzed. A news alert. River reached for it first, her smile fading as she read the screen. "What is it?" I asked. "Cooper Industries stock dropped another 15% today," she read. "CEO Xander Cooper announces temporary step back from daily operations due to health concerns." "Health concerns?" Reagan scoffed. "More like stress from trying to cover his tracks. The SEC is sniffing around just like we predicted." I took the phone, staring at my father's photo. He looked older, greyer. The confident smirk I remembered was replaced by tight, worried lines around his mouth. "Your mother's been calling Martha daily," River added gently, "asking if she's heard anything." "Have they figured out you helped me?" I asked, suddenly worried. River shook her head. "No. I covered my tracks well. Besides, they're too focused on damage control to look closely at anyone else." The cupcake sat untouched, its candle now just a pool of wax. 6 months of freedom, of learning who I was without my parents' constant control. I had a job, an apartment, real friends. But I also had Martha's documents, burning a hole in my dresser drawer. "I saw Otis Graham on TV yesterday," Reagan said, refilling our glasses. "He's engaged to some socialite from New York. Guess he moved on pretty quick." "Good for him," I muttered. At least he had a choice. A knock at the door made us all freeze. No one knew my address except the people in this room. River moved to the window while Reagan positioned herself between me and the door. "Who is it?" I called, trying to keep my voice steady. "Delivery for Emma Parker." I looked at Reagan, who nodded. When I opened the door, a courier handed me a thick manila envelope and left without a word. "It's from Martha," I said, recognizing her handwriting. Inside was a USB drive and a letter. "Dear Trinity," I read aloud. "Your father's been asking questions about the missing files from 2019. He doesn't know I have copies, but he's desperate enough now that he's starting to make mistakes. Yesterday, I overheard him talking about offshore accounts. Be careful. Love, Martha. River plugged the USB into her laptop. Holy shit, she whispered as documents filled the screen. These aren't just questionable transactions. This is full-blown fraud. Look at the dates, Reagan pointed, all leading up to when they tried to force you into that marriage. The Graham merger wasn't just about social climbing. They needed it to hide all of this. My hands shook as I scrolled through years of illegal activities. All those charity galas, all those society parties, funded by fraud and corruption. What do I do with this? I asked. That depends, Reagan said carefully. Do you want to destroy them? Or do you want to make them face consequences? They're already facing consequences, River argued. Look at them. Their perfect world is crumbling without Trinity to prop up their plans. I thought about Martha, still working in that house, watching my parents unravel, about all the other daughters they might try to use if they recovered from this setback. I want them to face real justice, I said finally. Not just social embarrassment or financial setbacks. They need to answer for what they've done. Reagan nodded slowly. I know someone at the SEC. We can arrange an anonymous tip, provide the documentation. But once we do this, there's no going back. Are you ready for that? The candle on my cupcake had completely melted, leaving a small dark pool. Like the darkness I'd escaped 6 months ago. But I wasn't that scared girl anymore. Do it, I said. But first, I need to warn Martha. Get her out before everything explodes. River squeezed my hand. We'll help. That's what real family does, remember? I looked around at my tiny apartment, at my true friends, at the life I'd built from scratch. My parents had taught me that power came from money and control, but real power, I'd learned, came from choosing your own path and standing up for what's right. To justice, I said, raising my glass, and to family, the kind we choose. The night stretched ahead, full of plans and possibilities. Tomorrow the real work would begin. But tonight, surrounded by love and truth, I was finally, completely free. The morning news hit like a thunderbolt. I was pouring coffee at the cafe when every phone in the place buzzed simultaneously with the alert. Cooper Industries was under federal investigation. Emma, Reagan appeared at my elbow. Take a break. Now. In the back office, River was already waiting, her laptop open to a live news feed. My father stood at a podium, cameras flashing as reporters shouted questions. Mother stood beside him, her face a frozen mask of dignity, but I could see the slight tremor in her champagne-manicured hands. The allegations against Cooper Industries are completely unfounded, Father was saying. We will cooperate fully with the investigation and expect to be fully cleared of any wrongdoing. Turn it up, I whispered as a reporter stood. Mr. Cooper, sources say this investigation was triggered by an anonymous whistleblower with extensive documentation. Do you have any comment on the identity of this person? My father's face tightened. We have reason to believe this is a coordinated attack by our competitors, possibly in connection with my daughter's current situation. Your daughter? Another reporter jumped in. Trinity Cooper has been missing for 6 months. Are you suggesting she's involved? My daughter is unwell. Mother stepped forward, her voice cracking perfectly on cue. We're deeply concerned about her mental state and the people who may be manipulating her. Trinity, if you're watching this, please come home. We can help you. I clicked the laptop shut, my hands shaking. They're trying to discredit me before I even come forward. Standard playbook, Reagan nodded. But we planned for this, remember? River's phone buzzed. Martha's clear. She quit this morning, took everything from her house. She's on her way here. Good. I took a deep breath. Then it's time for phase 2. Reagan pulled out a burner phone. My SEC contact is ready. 1 call and we release everything. The documentation, the offshore accounts, all of it. Wait, River said, pulling up another news site. Look at this. A new headline scrolled across the screen. Graham Industries cuts all ties with Cooper Industries amid fraud investigation. Otis Graham released a statement, River read. We are shocked by these allegations and are fully cooperating with federal authorities. Our planned merger was contingent on complete transparency, which was clearly not provided. I laughed darkly. Shocked? Please. They knew. They just didn't expect to get caught. The office door opened and Martha hurried in, looking smaller without her housekeeper's uniform. Trinity! I hugged her tight, smelling the familiar lavender perfume she'd worn all my life. Thank you for everything, Martha. Are you okay? Better than your parents, she pulled back, her eyes fierce. Your mother threw a crystal vase at the wall when the SEC arrived. Your father's been locked in his study making calls all morning. Did they suspect you? No, they're too busy suspecting each other. Your mother accused your father of ruining their lives with his reckless schemes. He blamed her obsession with social status. Reagan held up the burner phone. It's your call, Emma. Release everything now, or wait. I thought about my mother's performance at the press conference, playing the worried parent, about my father's attempts to paint me as unstable, about years of manipulation and control. Do it, I said. Release it all. Reagan dialed, spoke briefly, then nodded. It's done. Within an hour, every major news outlet will have the full documentation. What about you? River asked softly. Are you ready to go public? I'd thought about this moment for weeks. Not yet. Let them squirm first. Let them wonder who betrayed them. Martha touched my arm. Your mother has been drinking heavily. Your father's heart condition. Don't, I cut her off. They didn't care about my mental health when they tried to force me into marriage. They don't get to play the victim now. My phone buzzed. Another news alert. The story was breaking. Words like systematic fraud and criminal conspiracy flashed across the screen. Cooper Industries stock trading halted, River read. Federal agents seen entering corporate headquarters. Trinity, Martha said quietly, using my real name. Whatever happens next, remember why you did this. Not for revenge, but for justice. I looked around at my chosen family. River with her unwavering loyalty, Reagan with her fierce protection, Martha with her years of quiet resistance. They'd helped me find not just freedom but strength. I remember, I said, straightening my shoulders, and soon, so will they. Outside the office, customers were glued to their phones, watching my old world crumble in real time. But in here, surrounded by truth and love, I was building something stronger than my parents' empire of lies. The next move would be theirs. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of what they might do. I was ready for whatever came next. The letter arrived 3 days after the SEC raid. No return address, just my new name written in my mother's perfect penmanship. How she found me, I didn't want to know. You don't have to open it, River said, watching me turn the envelope over in my hands. Yes, I do. I broke the seal and pulled out a single sheet of expensive stationery. Trinity, your father had a minor heart attack yesterday. The doctors say stress was a factor. I know you're behind the investigation. Whatever we did to hurt you, surely this is punishment enough. Come home. We can fix this as a family. Mother. Minor heart attack, Reagan scoffed, reading over my shoulder. More like panic attack when he realized he couldn't destroy evidence fast enough. My phone rang. An unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Trinity? My father's voice, weaker than I remembered. Don't hang up. I put the phone on speaker. River and Reagan moved closer, protective bookends on either side of me. What do you want? My voice stayed steady, surprising me. The SEC is freezing our assets. Your mother's a mess. Is this what you wanted? To destroy everything I built? Everything you built on lies, I corrected. How many other families were you planning to manipulate? How many other daughters were you going to use as bargaining chips? A long pause. You don't understand business. No, you don't understand, Father. I saw the documents, all of them. The fraud, the cover-ups, the planned merger with the Grahams to hide your illegal dealings. Did you really think I'd never find out? Where are you? His voice hardened, more like the father I remembered. We need to discuss this in person. Your mother's lawyer is probably very busy right now, I cut in. How many years do you think you're looking at, Father? Federal fraud charges aren't like your country club violations. I'm still your father, he snapped. Everything I did was to secure your future. My future? I laughed bitterly. You mean securing your future by selling me to the highest bidder? The Grahams would have what? Hidden your crimes in exchange for your daughter? Was that the real merger plan? Another pause. I heard ice cubes clinking in a glass. Even during a crisis, he wouldn't skip his scotch. Come home, he said finally. We can make this go away. The SEC, the investigation, all of it. We're still powerful enough. No. The word came out sharp and clear. You're not powerful anymore. That's why you're calling. You're desperate. Trinity, please. My mother's voice now. She must have been there all along. We're your parents. We love you. Love? My voice cracked. Love doesn't come with conditions. Love doesn't treat people like property. We can change, she pleaded. Whatever you want. Just call off the investigation. Reagan squeezed my shoulder. River nodded encouragingly. You're right about one thing, I said. I am behind the investigation. I have copies of everything, and tomorrow I'm going to the SEC in person to testify. You wouldn't, Father growled. You'd destroy this family? You destroyed this family long ago. I'm just making sure you can't destroy anyone else's. Think about what you're doing, Mother said. Once you do this, there's no going back. I looked at the people around me. My real family. I don't want to go back. I'm going forward. Trinity! I hung up. The phone immediately rang again. And again. And again. Block the number, Reagan advised. You said what needed to be said. They'll try to stop you, River warned. The SEC testimony. Let them try. I stood up, stronger than I'd felt in months. I'm not afraid anymore. Martha appeared in the doorway. I just saw the news. Your father's company stock is being delisted tomorrow. Good. I picked up my mother's letter and tore it in half. They need to learn that actions have consequences. Are you ready for tomorrow? River asked. Once you testify, your name will be public. Everyone will know. I thought about the scared girl who'd fled in the night 6 months ago. She'd been running away, but tomorrow I'd be running toward something, toward justice, toward truth, toward real freedom. I'm ready, I said. It's time everyone knew the truth about Cooper Industries, about all of it. We'll be right there with you, Reagan promised. Outside, rain fell on Seattle's streets, washing everything clean. Tomorrow would bring cameras, questions, and consequences. But tonight, I was exactly where I needed to be, surrounded by people who loved me for who I was, not what I could do for them. The phone rang one last time before I blocked the number. Let them worry tonight. Tomorrow they'd learn what real power looked like. The SEC building loomed before me, all glass and steel. Camera crews clustered near the entrance, waiting. My testimony had been kept quiet, but somehow they knew something big was coming. Ready? River adjusted my blazer collar, a far cry from the designer suits my mother used to choose for me. As I'll ever be. I gripped the document folder tighter. Where's Reagan? Already inside with her contact, Martha's watching from the cafe across the street. River checked her phone. Your parents just arrived, back entrance. My stomach lurched. They're here? Of course they are. Their lawyers probably insisted. River squeezed my hand. But they can't stop you, not anymore. We approached the entrance. Cameras swiveled toward us, but no one recognized me yet. 5 more steps. 4. 3. Trinity! My mother's voice cut through the morning air. She stood at the corner of the building, designer sunglasses hiding what I suspected were hungover eyes. Father wasn't with her. Miss Parker, an SEC official approached. We're ready for you. Mother pushed forward. Trinity, please. Don't do this to us. To your father. His heart. Ms. Cooper, the official interrupted. This is a federal proceeding. Any attempt to interfere with a witness. Witness? Mother's voice rose. She's my daughter. Reporters perked up, cameras turning. The morning news would have their story now. Not anymore, I said clearly, loud enough for the cameras to catch. You lost the right to call me daughter when you tried to sell me to cover up fraud. Gasps and clicking shutters. Mother's face went white. Inside, the hearing room was smaller than I expected. Father sat with his lawyers looking old and grey. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Please state your name for the record, the lead investigator said. I leaned into the microphone. Trinity Cooper, although I now legally go by Emma Parker. And you have documentation regarding Cooper Industries' financial dealings? I opened my folder. Yes, 8 years of records showing systematic fraud, money laundering, and illegal offshore accounts. Father's lawyer stood. We object to this testimony. Ms. Cooper is clearly acting out of personal vendetta. The evidence speaks for itself, I cut in, sliding the first document forward. This shows the initial transfer to the Cayman Islands account, dated the same day my father began negotiations with Graham Industries for my arranged marriage to their heir. More documents followed, years of careful records, thanks to Martha's diligence. Father's face grew paler with each revelation. Mother sat in the back, quietly crying. And this final document, I said, pulling out the contract I'd found in Martha's files, shows that the Graham merger wasn't just about business. It was a carefully orchestrated cover-up, with me as the sacrificial lamb. That's enough, Father stood suddenly. This is ridiculous. She's just a bitter child who— Mr. Cooper, the investigator warned, sit down or you'll be removed. I met my father's eyes. I'm not a child anymore, and I'm not your property. Everything I did, he said hoarsely, was for this family. No, everything you did was for yourself, and now you're going to face the consequences. The hearing lasted 3 more hours. I presented evidence, answered questions, watched my parents' empire crumble one document at a time. When it was over, reporters swarmed the steps outside. River appeared at my side, shielding me from the chaos. Trinity! Mother pushed through the crowd. You've ruined us. Are you happy now? I turned to face her, cameras rolling. I didn't ruin anything. Your choices did that. Your lies, your manipulation. We gave you everything, she hissed. No, you took everything. My choices, my freedom, my trust. But not anymore. Father emerged, surrounded by lawyers. He looked defeated, small. The board is demanding my resignation, he said to no one in particular. Good, I replied. Maybe they'll choose someone who understands that people aren't commodities to be traded. Ms. Cooper, reporters called. What motivated you to come forward? I looked at River, thought of Reagan and Martha waiting across the street. The truth motivated me, and the hope that no other daughter will be used the way I was. Mother reached for me one last time. Please, Trinity, we're still family. No, I said quietly. Family doesn't hurt each other like this. Family protects each other, and I finally found people who understand that. I walked away, River beside me, leaving my parents to face the cameras alone. Their lawyers would work all night, trying to save what they could of the company, of their reputations. But I was done. The truth was out. Justice was in motion. Across the street, Martha and Reagan waited with coffee and proud smiles. My real family, my real home. The cameras followed, but I didn't care anymore. Let them see. Let everyone see what happens when you choose truth over power, love over control. Let them see me, finally free. The autumn rain tapped against Reagan's cafe windows as I wiped down the espresso machine. The news played quietly on the TV above the counter. Another story about Cooper Industries' dismantling and sale. Still weird seeing your father in handcuffs? River asked, sliding onto a bar stool. Not as weird as seeing my mother check into rehab, I replied, starting her usual oat milk latte. Martha says she's actually doing the work this time. Speaking of Martha, River nodded toward the door. Martha entered, shaking rain from her umbrella. She looked younger somehow, more relaxed in casual clothes than she ever had in her housekeeper's uniform. The house sold, she announced, settling beside River. Some tech executive bought it. They're turning the grounds into a community garden. I smiled at the irony. My mother's precious manicured lawns transformed into something actually useful for the community. "How's the new job?" I asked, sliding her a cup of Earl Grey. "The women's shelter needs all the help they can get. Turns out I'm good at helping people start over." She gave me a meaningful look. I learned from the best. The bell chimed again. Reagan hurried in, waving a letter. "Emma, this just came for you." My new name felt natural now, a choice rather than an escape. I opened the envelope and gasped. "What is it?" River leaned over. "It's from the SEC," I said, scanning the letter. "They're using the seized Cooper assets to create a foundation for helping women escape financial abuse and coercive control." "And," Reagan prompted, grinning like she already knew, "they want me to help run it." Martha clasped her hands together. "Oh, Trinity, Emma, that's perfect." "Is it?" I set the letter down. Part of me still feels guilty. About my father's heart condition, my mother's breakdown. "Stop," River said firmly. "Their choices led to those consequences. Your choice was to tell the truth." "Besides," Reagan added, "your mother's doing better in rehab than she ever did drowning her guilt in vodka. Sometimes rock bottom is where people find themselves." The TV caught my attention. Another breaking news alert. My father's face appeared on screen as the anchor spoke. Former CEO Xander Cooper pleaded guilty today to multiple charges of fraud and financial misconduct. In a surprising statement, Cooper expressed remorse not for his financial crimes, but for, quote, "sacrificing my daughter's happiness for profit." Cooper faces up to 15 years. I turned down the volume. He actually admitted it. "People can surprise you," Martha said softly, "even after all these years." The cafe door opened again. A young woman entered, looking nervous and lost, the same way I'd looked that first night in Seattle. "Can I help you?" I asked. She twisted her engagement ring anxiously. I heard this was a safe place. Someone at the women's shelter gave me this address. Said to ask for Emma." River and Reagan exchanged knowing looks. Martha smiled into her tea. "Have a seat," I said, already reaching for a clean mug. "Let me guess. Family trying to control your life?" She nodded, tears welling up. "My father. There's this merger. I'm supposed to marry. I know exactly what you're going through." I placed a hot chocolate in front of her. "And I know exactly how to help." As I listened to her story, I thought about choices and consequences, about truth and justice, about how sometimes you have to break something completely before you can build something better. The rain continued outside, but in here it was warm and safe. River typed resources into her phone. Reagan already had her network of contacts ready. Martha offered gentle encouragement born from years of watching and waiting and helping. And me? I wasn't running anymore. I wasn't hiding. I was exactly where I needed to be, helping another daughter find her voice, her strength, her freedom. "What's the first step?" the young woman asked. I smiled, remembering my own first step into this new life. "The first step is choosing yourself. Everything else follows from that." She took a deep breath, slipped off her engagement ring, and placed it on the counter. "Then that's what I choose." River squeezed my hand under the counter. Reagan winked. Martha beamed with pride. The TV still played silently above us, showing the end of an empire built on lies. But here, in this cafe, we were building something stronger, a network of truth, of support, of real family. I picked up the SEC letter again, running my fingers over my new name. Emma Parker, advocate and survivor. It wasn't the life my parents had planned for me. It was better. "Welcome to your first day of freedom," I told the young woman. "Trust me, you're going to love where this journey takes you."
The smell of garlic and herbs filled the kitchen as I wiped sweat from my brow, orchestrating the chaos of a Friday night dinner service. Pots clanged, flames roared, and servers darted in and out with steaming plates of my signature dishes. This was my element, the heart of Lorenzo's, the Italian restaurant I'd built from a rundown diner into the talk of the neighborhood. "Jacqueline!" My mother-in-law Margaret's shrill voice cut through the kitchen's symphony. "The marinara is too spicy again. I just had table 6 complain." I bit my tongue, maintaining my focus on plating the seafood risotto. The recipe hasn't changed in 5 years, Margaret. It's the same sauce that won us the city's Best Italian award last month. Well, maybe we should go back to my recipe, she huffed, hovering over my shoulder. The old customers preferred it. The old customers, right. All 12 of them who used to come to the failing restaurant before I convinced Terry to let me revamp the menu. Before I spent countless nights perfecting recipes and building relationships with local suppliers. Before I transformed this place into something special. Order up, I called out, ignoring her commentary. Table 8, 2 risottos, 1 chicken marsala. You're behind on table 12. Terry appeared through the kitchen doors, his presence adding to the tension. My husband of 15 years looked more like a businessman these days than the charming chef I'd fallen in love with in culinary school. And Mother's right about the marinara. I closed my eyes for a moment, counting to 3. I've got it under control, Terry. Why don't you handle the front of house? Someone has to, he muttered, exchanging knowing looks with his mother. The night continued its familiar dance, me cooking, them criticizing. By closing time, my feet ached and my chef's coat was stained with the day's efforts, but satisfaction warmed my chest as I counted the night's receipts. Another record-breaking Friday. We need to talk about the books, Terry said, appearing in the office doorway. His mother lingered behind him like a shadow. The numbers are great, I smiled, holding up the stack of receipts. We're up 20% from last month. That's not what I mean, Terry sighed, loosening his tie. Mother and I have been discussing the future of Lorenzo's. Margaret stepped forward, her perfectly manicured hands clasped together. The restaurant business is changing, dear. We need to think bigger. Bigger? I set down the receipts. We're doing better than ever. The food critic from the Herald is coming next week and... This isn't about your cooking, Terry interrupted. It's about business decisions, real business decisions. The way he emphasized real made my stomach clench. I handle the business decisions too, Terry. Or did you forget who negotiated our produce contracts? Who developed our catering program? That's all kitchen stuff, Margaret waved her hand dismissively. We're talking about the big picture. I think I'll stay late and finish the inventory, I said, turning back to my paperwork. I couldn't handle another lecture about my place in the restaurant. They left, but their words lingered like smoke in the air. I worked until nearly midnight, finding comfort in the routine of counting and organizing. As I prepared to leave, voices drifted from the dining room. Terry and Margaret were still here? I moved closer to the partially open door, their hushed conversation becoming clearer. The buyers want to close quickly, Terry was saying. They're offering more than we expected. My heart stopped. Good, Margaret replied. The sooner we get rid of this place, the better. We can use the money to open that sports bar franchise you've been eyeing. What about Jacqueline? Oh, Terry. Margaret's laugh was soft but cruel. She's a good cook, I'll give her that. But her place is in the kitchen, not in business meetings. She'll understand eventually. I pressed my hand against my mouth, stifling a gasp. The room spun as pieces clicked into place. The mysterious meetings, the whispered phone calls. Terry's sudden interest in the financial paperwork. They were selling my restaurant, my dream, my life's work, and they hadn't even bothered to tell me. I slid down the wall, my legs unable to hold me up anymore. The cold tile against my back was the only thing that felt real. Through the crack in the door, I could see them toasting with the expensive wine I'd selected for our anniversary celebration next week. To new beginnings, Terry said, clinking his glass against his mother's. I looked down at my hands, calloused and scarred from years of cooking, building, creating. These hands had turned a failing diner into a neighborhood gem. These hands had created the dishes that put us on the map. These hands, I realized as they curled into fists, weren't done fighting yet, not by a long shot. I spent the weekend in a daze, mechanically going through the motions of prep work and service while my mind raced with possibilities. Maybe I'd misunderstood. Maybe there was an explanation that made sense of this betrayal. Earth to Jackie. Annika waved her hand in front of my face. My best friend and head server looked concerned. You've been staring at that sauce for 10 minutes. What's going on? Before I could answer, Terry burst through the kitchen doors, practically glowing. Everyone gather round. Big announcement. The kitchen staff dropped what they were doing, forming a circle. Margaret appeared at Terry's side, beaming like she'd just won the lottery. My stomach churned. "We've got amazing news," Terry announced. "Lorenzo's has been acquired by the Summit Restaurant Group. They're going to transform this place into something really special." The room erupted in confused murmurs. I gripped the edge of the prep table, knuckles white. "What about our jobs?" Carlos, my sous chef of 3 years, asked. "Summit will evaluate everyone's positions during the transition," Margaret explained smoothly. "But don't worry. Good kitchen help is always needed." Kitchen help. The words hit me like a physical blow. When did this happen? I found my voice, surprisingly steady despite the rage building inside me. "When were you planning to discuss this with me, Terry?" The room fell silent. Terry's smile faltered slightly. "Jackie, honey, let's talk about this in private." "No," I stepped forward. "Let's talk about it right here. When were you planning to tell your wife, the executive chef who built this restaurant's reputation, that you were selling it?" "Now, Jacqueline," Margaret cut in, "don't make a scene. This is a business decision." "A business decision?" I laughed, the sound harsh and foreign. "I own 30% of this restaurant. You can't sell without my signature." Terry's expression darkened. "Actually, we can. Remember that paperwork you signed last month? The insurance documents?" The floor seemed to drop out from under me. Those papers. I'd been in the middle of dinner service, and Terry had insisted they needed signing right away. "You tricked me?" My voice cracked. "We did what was necessary," Margaret said firmly. "You're an excellent chef, dear, but the business side of things, well, it's better left to those who understand it." Annika stepped forward, her face flushed with anger. "Are you kidding me? Jackie's the reason this place is successful. "That's enough," Terry snapped. "The deal is done. Summit takes over next month. Anyone who wants to stay on can interview with the new management." I looked around at my staff, my family, seeing the shock and confusion on their faces. Carlos, who'd been with me since we served our first plate. Maria, whose dessert recipes had earned us write-ups in food magazines. All of them betrayed along with me. "Jackie," Terry reached for my arm, but I jerked away. "Be reasonable. You can keep cooking. That's what you love, right?" What I loved, I said quietly, was building something of my own, something real. I untied my apron, letting it fall to the floor. But I guess that was never really mine, was it? I walked out of the kitchen, past the dining room where I'd served countless meals, past the bar where I'd celebrated our successes, and straight to my car. Annika followed, calling my name, but I couldn't stop. If I stopped, I'd fall apart. At home, I methodically packed a bag while Terry blew up my phone with messages. Each one made me angrier than the last. "You're being dramatic. Think about this rationally. Mother and I know what's best. Your place is in the kitchen, not the boardroom." A knock at the door made me jump. I opened it to find Annika, holding a bottle of wine and wearing her "let's plot revenge" face. "I brought reinforcements," she said, pushing past me into the house. Also, I quit. Told Terry exactly where he could stick his transition period. Despite everything, I laughed. "You didn't." "Oh, I did." She pulled out 2 glasses. "Now we're going to drink this wine, and then we're going to figure out how to make those backstabbing snakes regret the day they underestimated you." I sank onto the couch beside her, finally letting the tears fall. "They're probably right. What do I know about business? I'm just the help." "Bull!" Annika poured the wine with force. "Who negotiated our liquor licenses? Who created our inventory system? Who turned a failing diner into the hottest reservation in town?" She handed me a glass. "You're not just a chef, Jackie. You're a businesswoman who happens to be brilliant in the kitchen, and I think it's time we showed them exactly what they're losing." I took a sip of wine, my mind already spinning with possibilities. Terry and Margaret thought they'd won, thought they'd put me in my place. But they'd forgotten something crucial about chefs. We know exactly how to turn up the heat. "You're right," I said, a plan beginning to form. "And I think I know just the person to help us serve up some karma." "Rick!" I called out, waving to the familiar figure at the corner table of the busy cafe. He stood up, his crisp suit and confident smile exactly as I remembered from our previous business dealings. "Jackie," he grasped my hand warmly. "When you called, I could hardly believe it. You never did take me up on that investment offer." "Because I was building something with my husband," I said, sliding into the seat across from him. Or so I thought. Rick's expression turned serious as I laid out everything that had happened. He'd been trying to invest in Lorenzo's for years, recognizing its potential early on. I'd always declined, loyal to the family business idea. "Let me get this straight," he leaned forward. "They sold to Summit without telling you? Those corporate vultures who turn every restaurant into a cookie-cutter franchise?" I nodded, stirring my coffee. "They tricked me into signing away my rights. The deal closes in 3 weeks." "Interesting timing," Rick mused, pulling out his tablet. "Summit's stock has been struggling. They need this acquisition to look good to their shareholders." He smiled, a predatory gleam in his eye. "Which means they can't afford any complications." "What kind of complications?" "Well," he swiped through some documents. "Summit's whole pitch is about acquiring successful, well-running establishments. What happens if Lorenzo suddenly starts struggling right before the sale closes?" Annika, who'd been quietly listening, perked up. "You mean like if their executive chef and half the staff suddenly quit?" "Exactly," Rick nodded. "And if certain health code violations were anonymously reported, if their stellar reviews suddenly turned mediocre, if their books showed some concerning patterns." "I won't do anything illegal," I said firmly. "Nothing illegal," Rick assured me, "just strategic. Summit has a clause in their contract. They can back out if the restaurant's performance drops below certain metrics before closing. Your husband and mother-in-law are counting on that final payment. What happens if it falls through?" My phone buzzed. Another text from Terry. "Mother and I are willing to forgive your outburst. Come back to work and we can discuss your role in the new structure." My blood boiled. "Tell me more about these metrics." Over the next hour, Rick outlined a plan that was both simple and devastating. I had access to everything: the recipes, the suppliers, the staff's loyalty. I knew every strength of Lorenzo's because I'd built them. "One more thing," Rick said as we wrapped up. "I have a property you might be interested in, right across the street from Lorenzo's, perfect for a restaurant." My heart skipped. "I can't afford—" "You can with investors," he interrupted. "I'm not the only one who's noticed your talent, Jackie. Give me a week to put together a proposal." As if on cue, my phone lit up with a call from Chad, the restaurant critic from the Herald. I'd forgotten he was supposed to review Lorenzo's this week. "Jackie!" His familiar voice boomed through the speaker. "Tell me it's not true. Tell me you haven't left Lorenzo's." "It's complicated, Chad." "Uncomplicate it. I was coming to review your food, not whatever corporate garbage Summit's going to serve up. My column's due next week." I caught Rick's eye, an idea forming. What if you did both? Review Lorenzo's now, and then again, after Summit takes over? A before and after piece? There was a pause. A comparison piece showing how corporate acquisition affects beloved local restaurants? That's actually brilliant. But what about you? Please tell me you're not leaving the industry. Actually, I glanced at Rick, who nodded encouragingly. I might have some news for you soon about a new venture. After hanging up, Annika grabbed my arm. Jackie, this is perfect. Chad's review will be the final nail in the coffin. There's just one problem, I said. Margaret's still working the front of house. She'll recognize Chad the moment he walks in. No, she won't. Annika grinned wickedly. Because I'm still in the group chat with the staff. Margaret's got a wedding to attend this weekend, 3 hours away, and Terry never works Saturday nights anymore. Rick gathered his things, looking pleased. Sounds like the pieces are falling into place. I'll start working on the investment proposal. Jackie, are you sure you're ready for this? I thought about all the times Margaret had undermined me, all the times Terry had dismissed my input as kitchen stuff. I thought about the staff who'd trusted me, the customers who'd supported us, the dreams I'd poured into every dish. They want me to stay in my place? I stood up, feeling stronger than I had in days. Fine. My place is running a successful restaurant, just not theirs. As we left the cafe, my phone buzzed one more time. A message from Margaret. Dear, I hope you're done with this tantrum. Remember, a woman's reputation in this industry is fragile. Don't burn bridges you can't rebuild. I showed the message to Annika, who snorted. Oh, bridges will burn all right, but they're the ones who lit the match. Looking up at the bright summer sky, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time since overhearing that conversation in the kitchen, I smiled. They thought they were ending my story. They didn't realize they were just setting up my comeback. The Herald's review hit like a bomb on Sunday morning. Chad had outdone himself, painting a vivid picture of Lorenzo's transformation from a neighborhood gem into a soulless corporate acquisition. The final paragraph was particularly scathing. With executive chef Jacqueline's departure and Summit Group's impending takeover, one must wonder, will Lorenzo's remain the heartbeat of authentic Italian cuisine or become another casualty of corporate standardization? Only time will tell, but this critic's recent experience suggests the heart of the restaurant left with its chef. My phone exploded with notifications. Terry called 6 times before I finally answered. "What did you do?" he demanded. "Summit's threatening to pull out of the deal." "I didn't do anything," I replied calmly. "Chad reviewed the restaurant. Isn't that what you wanted?" He came on the one night Mother and I weren't there, and suddenly half the staff called in sick, the wine deliveries were late, and the backup recipes were accidentally deleted from the system. I examined my nails. Sounds like management problems to me. Good thing Summit's coming to fix everything. "Jackie, this isn't a game. Mother and I have already spent the first payment. We need this deal to close." I sat up straighter. "You spent money you don't have yet? That doesn't sound like good business sense, Terry." The line went silent for a moment. "Just come back. We can work something out. Give you a better position in the new structure." "Sorry, I'm busy. Actually heading to a meeting right now." I hung up and walked into the sleek office building where Rick had arranged to meet potential investors. Annika was already there, dressed sharply and clutching a portfolio of our business plan. "Ready to show them what you've got?" she asked. I straightened my jacket. "Born ready." The meeting room was intimidating, all glass and chrome, filled with serious-looking people in expensive suits. Rick stood at the head of the table, looking confident. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "I'm excited to present an extraordinary opportunity. Chef Jacqueline, recently featured in the Herald's Rising Stars of Cuisine, is launching a new contemporary Italian restaurant. But don't take my word for it. Taste for yourself." On cue, servers brought out samples of my signature dishes, the ones that had put Lorenzo's on the map. I'd spent all night cooking them in Rick's test kitchen. The room fell silent as they ate. One woman closed her eyes in obvious pleasure. A man in the corner actually licked his fork. "The location is prime real estate," Rick continued, pulling up slides. "Direct visibility from the main street and—" He paused for effect. "Directly across from the soon-to-be-struggling Lorenzo's." Questions flew rapid-fire. I answered each one with the confidence that came from years of running a successful restaurant, even if others hadn't acknowledged it. When I detailed my plans for modernizing traditional recipes, the woman who'd closed her eyes actually applauded. After the meeting, Rick was beaming. "They're in. All of them. We can start construction next month." My phone buzzed again. A text from Carlos, my former sous chef. "Summit's inspectors just left. They don't look happy. BTW, we all quit. When do you need us to start?" I showed Rick the message. "Looks like your complications are working." Summit's stock dropped 3 points after that review. He grinned. "Their board is asking questions about the acquisition. Terry and Margaret's perfect plan is unraveling." Later that evening, I drove past Lorenzo's. Through the windows, I could see Margaret gesturing frantically at a group of people in suits, probably Summit executives. Terry sat at the bar, head in his hands. My phone rang. Margaret's number. "How dare you?" she hissed when I answered. "Summit's cutting their offer in half. They say the restaurant's not worth what was promised." Funny how things change when the kitchen help leaves, isn't it? "You ungrateful little— After everything we've done for you?" I laughed. "Everything you've done for me? I did everything for that restaurant. I made it what it is, and now I'm going to make something even better, without you." "What are you talking about?" "Oh, didn't you hear? A new restaurant's opening across the street, contemporary Italian. Maybe you'll come try it sometime, if you can afford it after Summit's done with you." I hung up before she could respond, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Through the window, I watched her face turn red as she presumably read the text I just sent, a screenshot of the signed lease for the building across the street. Annika's car pulled up beside mine. Want to go celebrate? The investors loved you. Actually, I said, I need to go kitchen shopping. We've got a restaurant to build. And a family to destroy? I shook my head, watching Terry and Margaret argue through the window. They're destroying themselves. We're just making sure we succeed while they do it. As we drove away, I caught one last glimpse of Lorenzo's in my rearview mirror. The sign that had once filled me with pride now reminded me of a valuable lesson. Success is the best revenge, but it's even sweeter when served across the street. 6 months later, I stood in the gleaming kitchen of Jacqueline's, watching my team prepare for our grand opening. The space hummed with energy as Carlos directed the line cooks through our final prep, the familiar sense of garlic and fresh herbs filling the air. "Chef," Annika called from the dining room, "the photographer from Food and Wine is here." I wiped my hands and walked out to greet him, passing under the elegant sign that bore my name. Just my name, no one else's. The dining room was a vision of modern sophistication, with warm lighting and exposed brick walls. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a perfect view of Lorenzo's across the street, where Summit's generic signage now hung limply in the afternoon sun. "This location is interesting," the photographer said, glancing across the street. "Wasn't Lorenzo's quite popular before Summit took over?" "Was it?" I smiled innocently. I hadn't noticed their reviews lately. In truth, Lorenzo's was hemorrhaging customers. Summit's standardized menu and rotating cast of inexperienced chefs had turned the once bustling restaurant into just another chain outpost. Terry had taken to drinking at the bar most nights, while Margaret desperately tried to maintain her iron grip on an increasingly empty dining room. The photo shoot was interrupted by a commotion at the front door. Speak of the devil. Terry stood there, looking disheveled in his rumpled suit. "Jackie," he called out, his voice carrying across the restaurant. "Can we talk? Please?" I excused myself from the photographer and approached my husband, soon-to-be ex-husband once the papers went through. "You're drunk, Terry." "I'm desperate," he corrected, swaying slightly. "Summit's threatening to close Lorenzo's. Mother's having anxiety attacks. The bank—" He lowered his voice. "The bank is asking questions about our mortgage." "Sounds like business problems," I said coolly. "Better left to those who understand it, right?" He flinched at his own words being thrown back at him. "I was wrong, okay? We were wrong. I see that now." His eyes roamed the restaurant, taking in the sophisticated decor, the full reservation book, the staff moving with purpose and pride. "You've built something amazing here. Again. I know. Maybe—" He stepped closer, that old charming smile appearing. "Maybe we could work something out? A partnership? I could help manage the front of house like old times." The sad thing was, part of me still loved him. Part of me remembered the young chef who'd once supported my dreams before his mother's influence and his own insecurities had poisoned everything. "Chef," Carlos called from the kitchen. "Need you to taste the special." "I have to go," I told Terry. "I have a restaurant to run." "Jackie, please." "You should leave before the dinner rush starts," I cut him off. "We're fully booked tonight. Actually, we're fully booked for the next 3 months." As if to emphasize my point, Chad from the Herald walked in, notebook in hand. His eyes lit up when he saw me. "Jackie, ready for that follow-up interview?" The response to my comparison piece was incredible. "People can't wait to hear about your new venture." Terry slunk away as I led Chad to a corner table. Through the windows, I could see Margaret standing outside Lorenzo's, watching us with a bitter expression. "So," Chad said, setting up his recorder, "tell me about the journey from Lorenzo's to Jacqueline's. It's quite a story of resilience." I glanced around my restaurant, my real restaurant, built on my terms. "Actually, it's a story about knowing your worth, about not letting anyone tell you to stay in your place." The interview was interrupted by the arrival of Rick and several investors, all beaming with pride. "Early numbers are exceeding projections," Rick announced. "We're already talking about expansion possibilities." "Expansion?" Chad's eyebrows shot up. "Do tell." As I outlined our future plans, I caught movement across the street. Terry was arguing with a man in a Summit corporate polo, gesturing wildly. Margaret stood in the doorway, her face pale as she watched another group of customers walk past Lorenzo's and head toward my restaurant instead. "Chef," Annika appeared at my elbow. "The first reservations are arriving." I excused myself and headed to the kitchen, pausing to straighten a frame on the wall. My culinary school diploma, displayed prominently where everyone could see it. Below it hung the recent review Chad had written about Lorenzo's post-summit takeover. A cautionary tale of corporate acquisition gone wrong. The kitchen doors swung open to organized chaos, exactly how I liked it. Flames leaped from skillets, fresh pasta rolled through gleaming machines, and my hand-picked team moved like a well-oiled machine. "Orders are coming in, chef," Carlos grinned, handing me my apron. I tied it on, feeling the familiar weight settle around my waist. Through the kitchen window, I could see the dining room filling up with eager guests, while across the street, Lorenzo's stood nearly empty. "All right, team," I called out, clapping my hands. "Let's show them what we can do." The lunch rush was in full swing when Margaret stormed into Jacqueline's, her designer handbag swinging like a weapon. I watched through the kitchen window as Annika intercepted her. "I'm sorry, we're fully booked," Annika said sweetly. "Perhaps try across the street? I hear they have plenty of available tables." "Don't play games with me," Margaret snapped. "I need to speak with Jacqueline, now." I wiped my hands and stepped out of the kitchen. "You can speak with me right here, Margaret." She looked around at my packed dining room, her face twisting. "Summit is pulling out completely. They're terminating the contract and demanding their initial payment back. Are you happy now? You've destroyed everything." "You destroyed everything," I corrected her, keeping my voice level. "The moment you and Terry decided I was just the help. We were protecting you." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You never understood the business side. Remember when you first started? You couldn't even balance the books." The memory hit hard. My first month at Lorenzo's, struggling with the accounting software while Margaret watched over my shoulder, clicking her tongue disapprovingly. But that was then. "Actually," Rick's voice cut in as he approached from the bar, "Jacqueline's business plan is one of the most impressive I've seen in 20 years of restaurant investment. She just needed someone to believe in her abilities outside the kitchen." Margaret's face reddened. "This is family business. Stay out of it." "Family?" I laughed. "Was it family when you tricked me into signing away my rights? When you dismissed everything I built as kitchen stuff?" "We need help," she said, her voice cracking. "Terry's drinking too much. The bank is threatening foreclosure on our house. Just tell us what you want. Money? A share in this place?" "I want you to leave," I said firmly. "And I want you to remember this moment the next time you think about underestimating someone." "You ungrateful little," she started, but stopped as Carlos appeared with 2 steaming plates. "Chef," he said, "the food critic from Taste magazine would like your opinion on her dishes." I turned away from Margaret. "Please see yourself out. We have paying customers to attend to." As she left, I heard her mutter, "You'll regret this. Family is everything." "No," I called after her. "Excellence is everything. That's what you never understood." The rest of the day passed in a blur of service and success. As the dinner rush wound down, Annika found me in my office, reviewing the day's numbers. "You okay?" she asked. That thing with Margaret was intense. "I'm fine," I said, but my hands shook slightly as I set down my tablet. "Just remembering things. Want to talk about it?" I stood up, walking to the window that overlooked both restaurants. Lorenzo's was dark already. They'd stopped serving dinner weeks ago. When I first married Terry, Margaret took me aside and said she'd teach me everything about running a restaurant. But every lesson was really about staying in my place. "The kitchen is your domain," she'd say. "Leave the important decisions to those who know better." And now look who knows better, Annika smiled. My phone buzzed, a text from Terry. "Please help. I'll do anything." I deleted it without responding. "Chef!" Carlos burst in. "You need to see this." He held up his phone, showing a local news website. The headline read, "Summit Restaurant Group faces investigation over fraudulent acquisition practices." "They're saying Summit knew Lorenzo's books were manipulated before the sale," Carlos explained excitedly. "They were trying to hide their own financial problems with quick acquisitions. Terry and Margaret could be implicated. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt oddly hollow. They did it to themselves, I said quietly. Chef, one of the line cooks appeared at the door. There's a situation in the kitchen. The new sauce isn't setting right. I straightened up, pushing away the memories and regrets. Let's go fix it. In the kitchen, surrounded by the controlled chaos I loved, I felt my strength return. This was my domain, not because someone told me to stay here, but because I chose it. I'd mastered every aspect of the restaurant business, from the books to the cooking, and no one could take that away from me. Hey, Annika caught my arm as I passed. Remember what you told that journalist last week? About success being the best revenge? I nodded. Well, I think you're wrong, she grinned. Success isn't revenge at all. It's justice. Through the kitchen window, I watched my dining room full of happy customers, my competent staff, my beautiful restaurant. Across the street, Lorenzo stood as a dark reminder of what happens when you underestimate the wrong person. Order up, I called out, turning back to my kitchen. Let's show them how it's done. Ladies and gentlemen, Rick's voice carried across the packed dining room. Welcome to the official grand opening of Jacqueline's. Applause filled the space as I emerged from the kitchen, still wearing my chef's coat. The restaurant had been open for 2 months, but tonight was our formal celebration. Food critics, local celebrities, and loyal customers filled every table. Before we begin tonight's special tasting menu, Rick continued, our executive chef and owner would like to say a few words. I stepped up to the small podium, my hands trembling slightly. Through the windows, I could see Terry and Margaret standing across the street, watching. They'd received their official eviction notice from Lorenzo's that morning. Thank you all for coming, I began, my voice steady despite my nerves. Someone once told me that my place was in the kitchen, not in the boardroom. Knowing laughter rippled through the crowd, my story had become somewhat legendary in local restaurant circles. They were half right, I continued. My place is in the kitchen, and the boardroom, and anywhere else I choose to excel, because success isn't about staying in your place, it's about creating your own. More applause. I caught sight of Chad from the Herald nodding appreciatively, his pen flying across his notepad. Tonight's menu tells a story, I said. Each dish represents a step in my journey. From the appetizer, my grandmother's arancini recipe that first made me fall in love with cooking, to the dessert, a modern take on traditional tiramisu that represents where we're heading. As if on cue, the kitchen doors swung open and servers emerged with the first course. The timing was perfect, just as we'd rehearsed. But most importantly, I added, tonight celebrates the power of believing in yourself, even when others don't. Thank you to my incredible team, my loyal customers, and everyone who helped make this dream a reality. I raised my glass, and the room followed suit. Through the windows, I saw Margaret turn away, pulling a reluctant Terry with her. The evening progressed perfectly until the dessert course, when Annika rushed up to me in the kitchen. Terry's at the bar, she whispered. He's demanding to speak with you, says he won't leave until you hear him out. I found him slumped on a bar stool, looking worse than ever. His suit was wrinkled, his tie loose. You need to leave, I said firmly. Jackie, please, he slurred slightly. The bank's taking the house. Mother's moving in with my sister. Everything's falling apart. That's what happens when you build success on lies, I replied. You taught me that. I was wrong, he said, his voice breaking. I let Mother control everything. I forgot who you really were, what you could do. Look at all this. He gestured around the restaurant. You did this without me. You did it better without me. Yes, I did. Give me another chance, he pleaded. I could work here, start at the bottom, prove myself. For a moment, I remembered the young chef I'd fallen in love with. The man who'd once supported my dreams before his mother poisoned everything. But that man was gone. No, Terry, I said gently. You can't work here. You can't be part of this. Because you never really believed in me. You just believed in controlling me. Jackie? Chef, Carlos appeared at my elbow. The food critic from Bon Appetit is asking about the inspiration behind the dessert. I turned back to Terry. You should go. Your mother's probably waiting. She's not, he said quietly. She blames me for everything. Says I should have controlled you better. Controlled me? I laughed. That was always the problem, wasn't it? You and Margaret were so busy trying to keep me in my place that you never noticed I'd outgrown it. Rick approached, his expression concerned. Everything okay here? Terry was just leaving, I said firmly. You'll regret this, Terry muttered, but the words held no power anymore. No, I replied. I only regret not doing it sooner. As security escorted him out, I returned to the dining room, where happy customers were finishing their desserts. Chad caught my eye and raised his glass in a silent toast. Chef, Carlos called from the kitchen. We need you for the final plating. I took one last look through the windows at Lorenzo's dark interior, remembering all the dreams I'd poured into that space. But standing in my own restaurant, surrounded by people who respected and valued me, I realized those dreams hadn't been lost. They'd just found a better home. Coming, I called back, turning away from the window in my past. In the kitchen, my team waited with the final dessert plates, each one a perfect representation of tradition, transformed into something new and better, just like me. Let's finish strong, I said, picking up my plating spoon. We've got our own legacy to build. The morning sun streamed through Jacqueline's windows as I unlocked the front door, breathing in the familiar scent of fresh bread already baking. Carlos always arrived early to start the day's prep. A movement across the street caught my eye. Workers were taking down the Lorenzo sign, leaving a blank space where my old life had once been. The local paper had reported that a boutique clothing store would be moving in. No more restaurant competition. Morning, chef, Annika breezed in, carrying 2 coffee cups. Did you see the email from Food and Wine? I nodded, unable to hold back my smile. The magazine had named Jacqueline's one of the top 10 new restaurants in America. The photo shoot was scheduled for next week. Have you heard from Terry or Margaret? She asked carefully. Terry's sister called yesterday, I said, accepting the coffee. Apparently, Margaret's driving her crazy, reorganizing her entire house and criticizing her cooking. Terry's staying with a friend, looking for work in another city. Good riddance, Annika muttered. The kitchen doors swung open, and Carlos emerged with a fresh croissant. Chef, you need to taste this new recipe. I think I've perfected the butter-to-dough ratio. As I bit into the perfectly flaky pastry, the front door chimed. Rick walked in, followed by an elegant woman I recognized from restaurant magazine covers, Diana, the famous restaurateur who owned venues across the country. Jackie, Rick beamed, Diana's been very interested in our success here. Please, Diana held up her hand. Let me speak for myself. She turned to me, her eyes sharp and appraising. I've been watching you, Jacqueline. The way you handled the Lorenzo situation, the way you built this place, it's impressive. Thank you, I said cautiously. I'm not here to buy you out, she smiled, reading my expression. I'm here to propose a partnership, your recipes, your management style, your vision, but with the resources to expand. Multiple locations, each one unique, each one reflecting its community while maintaining your standards. Rick nodded encouragingly. I've reviewed the proposal. It's solid, Jackie. You'd maintain creative control. And who would run this location? I asked. You would, Diana replied. This would be the flagship. I don't want to change what works. I want to help it grow. Before I could respond, the door chimed again. Margaret stood there, looking smaller somehow without her designer clothes and perfect makeup. I need to speak with you, she said quietly. Diana raised an eyebrow. Should we give you a moment? No, I said firmly. Whatever she has to say, she can say in front of everyone. Margaret stepped forward, clutching her worn purse. I came to apologize. I was wrong about you, about everything. A bit late for that, isn't it? Yes, she admitted, but I wanted you to know. Seeing what you've built here, how everyone respects you. I understand now what I tried to destroy, what I tried to keep Terry from seeing. And what's that? That you were never just the help, she said, her voice cracking. You were the heart, the vision, everything we pretended to be but weren't. I let her words hang in the air for a moment, then turned to Diana. Tell me more about this partnership. Margaret took the hint and left quietly, the door closing softly behind her. Diana smiled and pulled out a folder. Let's talk details. As we sat discussing expansion plans and creative control, I watched my staff prepare for the day. Carlos training a new line cook, Annika arranging the dining room with perfect precision, Rick adding his business insights to Diana's proposal. This was my real family. People who believed in excellence over control, support over suppression. One more thing, Diana said, sliding a final document across the table. We'll need a new name for the restaurant group. She tapped the proposed logo, Jacqueline's Restaurant Group, where vision meets tradition. Perfect, I smiled, picking up the pen. The door chimed one final time. A young woman in chef's whites stood nervously in the entrance. Can I help you? I asked. I'm here about the apprenticeship program, she said. The one for aspiring female chefs? My mother says I should stick to serving, but you want more, I finished for her. She nodded eagerly. I glanced at the empty space across the street where Lorenzo's sign had been, then back at this young chef with dreams in her eyes. Come on back to the kitchen, I said, standing up. Let's see what you can do. As I led her through my restaurant, my empire in the making, I caught my reflection in the polished surfaces. I saw not just a chef, not just a businesswoman, but someone who had refused to stay in her place. And now I could help others do the same. First lesson, I told my new apprentice, handing her an apron. Success isn't about fitting into someone else's kitchen, it's about building your own.
The first time my husband laughed at my writing dreams, I should have known. But love makes you blind, and success makes the best revenge. My name is Kaya, and I've spent the last decade pretending my passion for writing was just a cute hobby. I run our family bookstore with my father, surrounded by other people's stories, while mine gathered dust in hidden folders on my laptop. That was until 6 months ago. Still working on that little book of yours? Brian's voice dripped with amusement as he walked into our home office, loosening his tie after another successful day at his marketing firm. I quickly minimized the document on my screen. Not fast enough. It's actually finished, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I was thinking of sending it to some agents. He leaned against my desk, picking up the framed photo of us from our wedding day. Honey, do you know how many people try to get published every year? Maybe stick to what you're good at. The bookstore's doing great under your management. I forced a smile, the kind that had become my specialty. You're probably right. That night, after Bryant fell asleep, I sat in our bathroom with my laptop, reading through my manuscript one last time. My sister Zoe had been pushing me to submit it for months. What's the worst that could happen? She'd said over coffee last week. They say no, at least you tried. I created a new email address under the pen name Alexandra Rivers and sent my manuscript to 5 literary agents. Then I deleted the sent emails and cleared my browser history. 3 weeks later, Rachel Benson called. Is this Alexandra Rivers? She asked when I answered my cell phone during my lunch break at the bookstore. My heart stopped. Yes? I couldn't put your manuscript down. The character development, the plot twists. It's exactly what we're looking for. When can we meet? I glanced through the store's window at my father, Abraham, helping a customer. I actually prefer to communicate via email. I'm very private about my writing. Rachel paused. That's unusual, but we can work with it. Are you willing to do virtual meetings? And just like that, my secret career began. I wrote under the cover of darkness, edited during quiet moments at the store, and conducted all business through carefully scheduled video calls from my car during grocery runs. The book took off faster than anyone expected. By month 4, it was climbing bestseller lists. My father started stocking multiple copies in the store's front window. Have you read this new author, Alexandra Rivers? He asked me one morning, straightening the display. Everyone's talking about her. Mysterious too. No photos, no social media presence. I pretended to examine the cover. Maybe she just wants her work to speak for itself. Bryant came home that evening, clutching a copy of my book. My stomach lurched. Look what everyone at work is raving about, he said, tossing it onto the kitchen counter. Apparently, it's the next big thing. The author's some recluse, though, probably ugly or weird. I stirred the pasta sauce harder than necessary. Maybe she just values her privacy. Who wouldn't want recognition for their work? He shook his head. That's the whole point of success. Getting your name out there, being somebody. I watched him walk away, my hands trembling slightly. In my pocket, my phone buzzed with another email from Rachel about upcoming promotional opportunities. The irony wasn't lost on me. That weekend, Dustin, our longtime friend and local writing group organizer, stopped by the bookstore. He caught my eye and held up my book. His knowing smile made my chest tight. "Quite an achievement," he whispered, when no one was within earshot. "Your secret's safe with me, but you should be proud." I shushed him, glancing around nervously. "How did you know?" "Please, I've been reading your writing for years in group. I'd recognize your voice anywhere." He squeezed my arm. "You deserve this, Kaya." Later that night, Bryant was reading in bed, my book, of all things. "This is actually really good," he mused. "The way the main character handles betrayal, it's powerful stuff." I turned away, fighting back a bitter laugh. If he only knew how much of our life I'd woven into those pages, how many of his dismissive comments had fueled my late-night writing sessions. My phone lit up with a notification. Rachel's email subject line made my blood run cold. National Literature Awards nomination. I closed my eyes, remembering all the times Bryant had patted my head and called my writing cute. All the times his mother Sylvia had suggested I focus on real work instead of scribbling stories. The satisfaction of secret success was sweet, but something inside me knew this couldn't last forever. Sooner or later, the truth would have to come out. I just didn't know then how spectacular and devastating that revelation would be. The manuscript sat in plain sight on my desk, mocking me. I'd gotten careless, leaving printouts of early drafts scattered among my other papers. That's how everything started to unravel. "What's this?" Brian's voice made me jump. He stood in the doorway of our home office, holding pages of my novel. The real one, not the published version. "Just some writing exercises," I said, trying to keep my voice casual while my heart hammered against my ribs. He flipped through the pages, his eyes narrowing. "These scenes, they're exactly like that Alexandra Rivers book. I was practicing by copying passages I liked." The lie tasted bitter in my mouth. "Lots of writers do that." Bryant set the pages down, but something had changed in his expression. That night, I shredded every draft I could find and deleted files from my laptop. But the damage was done. I could feel it in the way he watched me, in his sudden interest in my writing habits. A week later, we attended a local literary event where my book was being discussed. Bryant insisted on coming, claiming he wanted to support my bookstore's involvement. "The symbolism in Chapter 3 is particularly striking," one reader said during the discussion. "The way the protagonist confronts her fears through that metaphor with the locked door." I shifted uncomfortably in my seat, remembering writing that scene at 3 a.m. after another one of Bryant's dismissive comments about my hobby. "What do you think, honey?" Bryant squeezed my hand, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "You've read it, right?" "It's interesting," I managed. Later that evening, Zoe called. "Have you seen Bryant's social media post?" I hadn't. I pulled it up and felt my stomach drop. There was a photo of him in our home office, surrounded by books, looking pensively at his laptop. The caption read, "Sometimes the biggest stories take time to tell. Can't wait to share some exciting news." "What is he doing?" Zoe's voice was sharp with concern. "I don't know," I whispered. But deep down, I did. The next morning, Rachel called during my usual grocery store hiding spot. "Alexandra, there's been an interesting development. A man named Bryant Shepard contacted our office, claiming to be you." My hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. "What?" "He has some convincing evidence, early drafts, notes, even a detailed outline of the plot. He says he used a female pen name to make the story more marketable." I couldn't breathe. "And you believed him?" "We're not sure what to believe. But with the National Literature Awards coming up, We need to sort this out quickly. That evening, Bryant was practically glowing when he came home. Guess who's been nominated for a major award? I stood in our kitchen, clutching a dish towel like a lifeline. What did you do? What I had to. He stepped closer, his voice soft but firm. Think about it, Kaya. Who would believe you anyway? You've never published anything. I have connections, credibility. It's my book, I whispered. Is it? Where's your proof? All those drafts you shredded, those files you deleted. He touched my cheek, and I flinched. This is better for both of us. I can make this book even bigger than it is. We'll both benefit. I jerked away from him. You can't do this. I already have. He pulled out an invitation from his pocket. The award ceremony is next month. They're expecting both of us, the brilliant author and his supportive wife. I ran to the bathroom and threw up, my whole body shaking. When I could breathe again, I called Zoe. I'll kill him, she said immediately. No, I wiped my face. I need to think. What's to think about? Tell everyone the truth. But it wasn't that simple. Bryant was right. I had no proof. I'd been so careful hiding my identity that I destroyed any evidence of my authorship. The next few weeks passed in a blur. Bryant did interviews, charming everyone with his humble storyteller persona. His mother, Sylvia, called constantly, gushing about her son's hidden talent. Even my father was impressed. Who would have thought? Abraham said one day at the store. Bryant, an author. No wonder he always supported you running the bookstore. I escaped to the storage room and called Dustin. People are starting to believe him, I said, my voice breaking. Then stop him, Dustin replied firmly. I've got copies of your early drafts from writing group, dated, with my comments. Would that help? I closed my eyes, thinking of the awards ceremony ahead. Keep them safe. I might need them soon. That night, Bryant practiced his acceptance speech in front of our bedroom mirror. This story came from a place of deep personal truth, he rehearsed, without a hint of irony. I watched him from the doorway, something hardening inside me. He caught my eye in the reflection and smiled. That same patronizing smile he'd given me for years when I talked about writing. The time for hiding was over. I had a speech of my own to prepare. You'll never guess who's coming to the ceremony, Bryant announced over breakfast, his voice dripping with satisfaction. Mom and Dad, of course, and I invited your father too. He was so excited. The toast in my mouth turned to ash. You invited our families. Why not? It's a celebration. He sipped his coffee, watching me over the rim. You should invite Zoe too. Make it a real family affair. I gripped my fork so hard it hurt. He was boxing me in, making it impossible to expose him without humiliating everyone we loved. Clever. Later that morning, Sylvia called while I was arranging books at the store. Darling, we simply must go shopping for the ceremony. You'll need something appropriate for the wife of a literary genius. I'm pretty busy with the store. Nonsense. I'll pick you up at 2. She hung up before I could protest. 3 hours later, I stood in an upscale boutique while Sylvia held up dresses. This one's perfect, subtle, elegant, won't draw attention from Bryant. Heaven forbid, I muttered. What was that, dear? Nothing? I forced a smile. It's beautiful. She pressed the dress into my arms. You know, I always worried about Bryant settling down with someone so simple, but now I see you were exactly what he needed, a supportive wife who could give him space to develop his talents. I disappeared into the fitting room, pressing my forehead against the cool mirror. My phone buzzed, a text from Zoe. Just got Bryant's invitation. Please tell me you have a plan. I didn't respond. That evening, Rachel called during my now routine escape to the grocery store parking lot. Alexandra, or whoever you are, this situation is unprecedented. Bryant's story about using a female pen name is gaining traction. The publicity is incredible. He's lying, I said, my voice breaking. Then prove it. Because right now, he's got a compelling narrative and evidence. What do you have? I ended the call and sat there, watching families load groceries into their cars, living their normal lives. My phone buzzed again, Dustin this time. I found more of your old drafts, he said when I answered. And I have emails from our writing group discussions. It's not much, but keep them safe, I interrupted. I'm not ready yet. Back home, Bryant was in his element, practicing his speech again. When I created this story, I poured my heart into every word. Stop. The word came out sharper than I intended. He turned, raising an eyebrow. Problem. How can you stand there and say those words? They're not yours. They are now. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. And you're going to smile and support me, just like you always have. Because if you don't, you'll hurt everyone. Your father, my parents, our friends. Is that what you want? I backed away. You're a coward. No, I'm smart. I saw an opportunity and took it. That's what winners do. He straightened his tie. Now, about your dress for the ceremony. The next day at the bookstore, my father couldn't stop talking about Bryant's success. To think, all those hours he spent in his office. He was writing this masterpiece. I knocked over a stack of books. Dad, please, are you okay? He helped me gather the fallen volumes. You seem stressed lately. I'm fine. I wasn't fine. I was drowning. That afternoon, Zoe stormed into the store. This has gone far enough. Not here, I hissed, pulling her into the storage room. He's giving interviews, Kaya. He's talking about scenes that you wrote about us, about our childhood. How can you let him steal your memories? I slid down against a shelf of books. What choice do I have? Tell the truth. Show them the proof. What proof? Everything I have is circumstantial. He's got the drafts, the notes. He's got forgeries. She knelt beside me. And you've got me. I remember every story you told me while writing this book. Every late-night call about plot points. Every tear you shed when Bryant dismissed your dreams. I looked at my sister, really looked at her. The ceremony's in 3 days. Then we have 3 days to prepare. She squeezed my hand. No more hiding. That night, Bryant hosted a small dinner party for his literary friends. I watched him hold court in our living room, describing his creative process with perfect conviction. The character's journey really reflects my own struggles with identity and recognition, he said, and everyone nodded appreciatively. I excused myself and went upstairs to our bedroom. Opening my laptop, I began to write. Not a novel this time, but a different kind of story. The true story. My phone lit up with a text from Dustin. Whatever you decide to do, I've got your back. We all do. I looked at my reflection in the window, hearing Bryant's laughter float up from downstairs. 3 days until the ceremony. 3 days until I either accepted this theft of my identity or fought back. The choice was becoming clearer with every stolen word that came out of my husband's mouth. The National Literature Awards ceremony buzzed with energy. Cameras flashed as Bryant guided me through the entrance, his hand pressed firmly against my lower back. The dress Sylvia chose felt like a straitjacket. Smile, he whispered through his teeth. Everyone's watching. They were. Literary critics, publishers, and authors filled the grand hall, all eager to meet the mysterious writer who'd captured readers' hearts. My heart. My words. Bryant. Rachel approached us, elegant in a black evening gown. Her eyes flickered to me briefly. And this must be your wife. Kaya, right? I nodded, watching her search my face. Did she recognize my voice from our calls? There's my boy. Sylvia's voice cut through the crowd. She and Bryant's father arrived, followed by my dad and Zoe. My sister's expression was thunderous. Quite a turnout, Abraham said, beaming with pride. Bryant, son, you've done us all proud. I excused myself to the bathroom, where I found Zoe waiting. I brought what you asked for. She pulled a USB drive from her clutch. Dustin's copies of your drafts, emails, everything. My hands shook as I took it. I don't know if I can do this. Look at me. She gripped my shoulders. That man out there is stealing your life's work. Your voice, your story. But Dad looks so happy. Dad will be prouder knowing his daughter wrote that book, not his fraud of a son-in-law. The ceremony began. I sat between Bryant and my father, watching speakers praise the year's literary achievements. Bryant squeezed my hand when they announced the major awards category, and the National Literature Award goes to Bryant Shepard for Shadows of Silence. The room erupted in applause. Bryant stood, straightening his jacket. He kissed my cheek before heading to the stage. "I've dreamed of this moment," he began, his voice thick with manufactured emotion. "This story came from the deepest part of my soul." I felt sick. These were my words. My soul he was laying bare. "The protagonist's journey reflects my own struggles with identity," he continued. "The scene where she confronts her past in her grandmother's attic, that was inspired by my own childhood." Beside me, Zoe made a small, angry sound. "That scene was about our grandmother, about the summer we spent sorting through her belongings after she died. Writing has always been my secret passion," Bryant said, his voice breaking perfectly. "I chose a female pen name because I wanted the story to speak for itself, free from preconceptions." Rachel watched from the front row, her expression unreadable. Sylvia dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "And finally, I want to thank my wonderful wife, Kaya." He gestured to me. "Her support made this possible." The spotlight found me. Hundreds of eyes turned in my direction. My father patted my hand proudly. Something snapped. I stood up. "Kaya!" Bryant's voice held a warning edge. I walked toward the stage, my heels clicking against the hardwood floor. The room fell silent. "Honey, this isn't the time," Bryant started, but I was already climbing the steps. "Actually," I said, my voice carrying through his microphone, "this is exactly the time." Sylvia half rose from her seat. "Bryant, what is she doing?" I reached into my clutch and pulled out the USB drive. "I have something to share with everyone." "Kaya, don't." Bryant grabbed my arm, but I pulled away. "The scene in the grandmother's attic?" I turned to face the audience. That was my grandmother, my attic, my memory. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I saw Rachel lean forward in her seat. "I can prove it." My voice grew stronger. "I have the original drafts, dated emails, witnesses from my writing group. I am Alexandra Rivers." The room erupted in chaos. Cameras flashed. People stood up. Bryant tried to grab the microphone, but I held firm. "The protagonist's struggle with identity, that was mine. Every word, every scene, every emotion, they're all mine." "She's lying," Bryant said desperately. "She's just upset, emotional." "Read page 158. I challenged the audience. "The scene where the main character finds her grandmother's old recipe box. Ask me what was in it. Ask me about the hidden letter beneath the snickerdoodle recipe. Ask me anything about this book, my book." Security approached the stage. Bryant smiled nervously at the crowd. "My wife has been under a lot of stress lately." "Check the USB drive," I said quickly. "Compare the writing group drafts with the published version. Look at the timestamps, the email trails." "That's enough." Bryant tried to lead me away, but I planted my feet. "No," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I've had enough of being quiet." In the audience, my father stood frozen. Zoe was filming everything on her phone. Sylvia looked like she might faint. And there, in the front row, Rachel Benson pulled out her phone and started making calls. The truth was out. Now I just had to prove it. Security didn't remove me from the stage. Instead, Rachel's voice cut through the chaos. "Let her speak." The audience settled into an uneasy quiet. Bryant's hand fell away from my arm. "The proof is all here," I said, holding up the USB drive. "But let me tell you something that isn't in any file. Let me tell you about the night I wrote the final chapter." Rachel nodded to a technician, who connected my drive to the presentation system. The screen behind me flickered to life. "It was 3 a.m, I continued. "I was sitting in our bathroom because Bryant said my typing kept him awake. I wrote about a woman finding her voice, not knowing I was really writing about myself." The first document appeared on screen, my original draft, dated and time-stamped, with Dustin's comments in the margins. "That's my writing group feedback," Dustin called out from the audience, standing up. "I can verify every word." Bryant stepped forward. Those could be fabricated. Page 243. I cut him off. The recipe box scene. Tell them what was under the snickerdoodle recipe, Bryant. Tell them about the letter. He opened his mouth, then closed it. It was a love letter, I said, my voice breaking. From my grandmother to a man who wasn't my grandfather. A secret she took to her grave that only Zoe and I knew about. Want to know how I know? Because we found it together. Zoe stood up. The letter was dated June 15th, 1962. It was written on blue stationery with a torn corner. The man's name was Robert. Cameras flashed. Journalists typed frantically on their phones. But that's not all, I continued. The protagonist's fear of thunderstorms. That came from the night Zoe and I hid under our grandmother's quilt during a blackout. The description of the attic smell, mothballs, and old leather, that's real. Every detail is memory, not imagination. Rachel approached the stage, holding her phone. I have every email exchange with Alexandra Rivers here. The writing style matches perfectly. The voice is identical. This is ridiculous. Sylvia stood up, her face flushed. Bryant would never. Ask him to explain any part of the writing process, I challenged. Ask him about the character arcs, the symbolism, the research. Ask him anything. Bryant's confident facade cracked. Sweat beaded on his forehead. The locked door metaphor in Chapter 3 called out a literary critic from the second row. What inspired that? Bryant stammered. Well, you see, the door represents. It was our first apartment, I interrupted. The door would stick in humid weather. You had to shoulder it open, just like the protagonist had, to force her way through her fears. You wouldn't know that, Bryant, because you were never there. You were too busy at the office. The audience murmured. More people stood up, phones recording. The proof is overwhelming, Rachel announced. The timestamps, the drafts, the consistent writing style in emails. Mr. Shepard, do you have anything to say in your defense? Bryant's shoulders slumped. For a moment, he looked smaller, vulnerable. Then his eyes hardened. You want the truth? His voice cracked. Fine. I found her manuscript. I read it. It was good. Better than good. But who was she? Nobody. Just a bookstore manager with a hobby. I could make it successful. I had the connections, the credibility. You had no right, I whispered. I made your book famous. He turned to me, desperate. Look what I did for it. The interviews, the publicity. You stole my voice, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. You stole my memories, my grandmother's story, my childhood with Zoe. You stole everything that made this book real. My father stood up slowly. Bryant, how could you? Dad, Bryant turned to his father. Mom, I just wanted. But Sylvia had already turned away, her shoulders shaking. Security finally approached, but not for me. They escorted Bryant off the stage as Rachel took the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, in light of this evidence, the National Literature Awards Committee will need to reconvene. But I think it's clear who the real Alexandra Rivers is. The room erupted in applause. Journalists swarmed forward, calling my name, my real name. Through the chaos, I saw my father pushing through the crowd. Kaya, he reached for me, tears in his eyes. Why didn't you tell me? I was afraid, I said, letting him pull me into a hug. I didn't want to disappoint you. Disappoint me? My daughter wrote a bestseller. I've never been more proud. Zoe joined our hug, squeezing tight. Told you the truth would set you free. Over their shoulders, I watched Bryant being led away. He looked back once, and in his eyes I saw something I'd never seen before. Defeat. Rachel touched my arm. We have a lot to discuss, Alexandra, or should I say, Kaya. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in months. Kaya, my name is Kaya, and I have more stories to tell. The aftermath exploded like a storm. Reporters camped outside our bookstore. My phone buzzed constantly, and social media erupted with hot takes and hashtags. But it was the quiet conversation in our living room that shook me most. I need to explain, Bryant said, sitting across from me. His tie was loose, dark circles under his eyes. 2 days had passed since the ceremony. There's nothing to explain. I started to stand, but Zoe put a hand on my shoulder. Let him talk, she said. You need to hear this. Bryant pulled out an old photograph, himself as a child, holding up a story he'd written. I was 8 here, Mom had it framed. Why are you showing me this? Because it was the last time she was proud of anything I created. His voice cracked. After this, everything I wrote was derivative, or shallow, or not up to the family standard. That doesn't excuse. No, it doesn't. He rubbed his face. But when I found your manuscript, God, Kaya, it was everything I'd ever wanted to write. Everything Mom always said I couldn't do. Zoe scoffed. So you stole it? I convinced myself I could do it justice, that I could give it the platform it deserved. He laughed bitterly. I sound pathetic, don't I? Yes, I said, but something in my chest tightened. The doorbell rang. Sylvia stood outside, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. May I come in? She asked quietly. I nodded, and she entered, freezing when she saw Bryant. The tension in the room could have cut glass. I found these. She pulled out a stack of papers from her bag. In the attic. Bryant's old stories, from when he was young. Bryant stiffened. Mom, don't. They're beautiful, she whispered. Creative, imaginative. And I killed that creativity, didn't I? That doesn't matter now, he said. It matters. She slammed the papers down. I did this. I made you believe you weren't good enough, and look what it led to. I watched them, mother and son, both breaking in different ways. I wanted to make you proud. Bryant's voice was barely audible. By lying, by stealing. Sylvia shook her head. I raised you better than that. Did you? He stood up suddenly. All I ever heard was how I wasn't measuring up, how I needed to be more successful, more impressive, more everything. Bryant, I started, but he was on a roll. Do you know what it's like, living with that pressure, watching your wife create something so beautiful while he choked, while you can barely string 2 sentences together because your mother's voice is always in your head, telling you it's not good enough? Sylvia sank into a chair, her face ashen. I never meant. I know you didn't, he said softly. But you did it anyway. The room fell silent. Outside, a camera flashed, another photographer hoping for a shot through our windows. I have to face the consequences, Bryant said finally. The publishing house is suing. My firm put me on leave. It's all falling apart. Good, Zoe muttered. But I wasn't so sure anymore. You need help, I said, surprising myself. Professional help, both of you do. Sylvia nodded slowly. She's right. Why are you being kind to me? Bryant asked. After what I did. Because I understand pressure, I said. I understand feeling like you're not enough. It's why I hid behind a pen name in the first place. The difference is, Zoe interjected, you didn't steal someone else's work. No, I agreed. But I'm not interested in revenge anymore. I just want my life back, my voice back. Bryant stood up. I'll move out tonight. Yes, I said. You will. He gathered his coat, then paused. The book, it really is brilliant, Kaya. I'm sorry I tried to make it mine. After he and Sylvia left, Zoe hugged me. You're too forgiving. No, I wiped my eyes. I'm just tired of anger. It's time to write my own next chapter. My phone buzzed. Rachel again. The publishing house wants to meet tomorrow. They're talking about a multi-book deal, under your real name this time. I looked around our living room, at the life Bryant and I had built. The bookstore receipts on the coffee table, the family photos on the wall, the half-finished manuscript in my laptop. Tell them yes, I said, but I have one condition. What's that? The dedication in the next edition of Shadows of Silence. I want to change it. To what? I thought about Bryant's childhood stories, about Sylvia's crushing expectations, about my own journey to find my voice. To everyone who's ever felt not good enough, I said. Sometimes the hardest story to tell is your own. Zoe squeezed my hand. Now that's a story worth telling. Outside, the sun was setting. casting long shadows through our windows. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, interviews, legal meetings, decisions about the future. But for now, I sat in my quiet living room, opened my laptop, and began to write. This time, under my own name. And how did it feel when your husband claimed your work as his own? The talk show host leaned forward. Her expression practiced sympathy. Like drowning, I said simply. But I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about my new book. 3 months had passed since the award ceremony. Bryant had moved to Seattle, started therapy, and signed a legal agreement acknowledging his theft. The media circus was finally dying down, but the aftermath still rippled through our lives. Of course, the host smiled. But surely our viewers want to know. They want to know about the story, I interrupted firmly. About hope, redemption, and finding your voice. That's what matters. Backstage, after the interview, Zoe handed me a coffee. You handled that well. I'm tired of being the woman whose husband stole her book. I want to be known for my writing. Speaking of writing, she pulled out her phone, showing me the latest bestseller list. My new novel, written under my real name, sat at number 3. Not bad for a bookstore manager with a hobby, I grinned. The bookstore had changed too. Dad had added an local author section, prominently featuring both my books. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Remember when we used to hide your manuscripts in the storage room? He said that evening, as we closed up shop. Now look at you. A customer approached the counter, clutching my new book. Would you sign this? I love how you wrote about forgiveness. It must have been hard, after everything. I signed the book, thinking about Bryant's last email. I'm doing better. The therapist says I need to find my own voice. Maybe someday I'll actually write something worth reading. It's not always about forgiveness, I told the customer. Sometimes it's about understanding. Later that night, Rachel called with news. The film rights are generating a lot of interest, and there's talk about a speaking tour, writing workshops, literary festivals. People want to hear your story, the real one. I looked at my laptop, where my 3rd novel was taking shape. Will I still have time to write? We'll make time, she promised. That's what matters most now. The next morning, Dustin stopped by the store. The writing group misses you. I miss them too. Come back, he said, not as a famous author, just as Kaya, who used to bring terrible coffee and great stories. I hugged him. Next Tuesday. The bell above the door chimed, and Sylvia walked in. We hadn't spoken since that night in my living room. I've been reading your new book, she said quietly. The mother in the story. Is she me? She's every parent who pushes too hard, I replied. Every voice that makes someone doubt themselves. She nodded, tears in her eyes. Bryant called yesterday. He's writing again. Children's stories, if you can believe it. I can, I said, and meant it. My phone buzzed. Another interview request. The subject line read, From Shadow to Spotlight, the Kaya story. No, I said aloud, typing a response. That's not my story anymore. Zoe looked up from the book she was shelving. What is your story? I gestured around the bookstore, at the readers browsing shelves, at my father helping a young girl find the perfect book, at my laptop, waiting for the next chapter. This, I said, all of this. That evening, I got an unexpected email from the National Literature Awards Committee. They were creating a new category for emerging voices, and they wanted me to be a judge. Your experience, the email read, has sparked an important conversation about authenticity and recognition in literature. I thought about all the writers out there, hiding their words, doubting their voices, about Bryant, starting over with children's stories, about Sylvia, learning to listen instead of judge, about my own journey from silence to speech. Yes, I wrote back, I'd be honored. At home, I opened my laptop to work on the new novel. The protagonist was different this time, not running from her past, but running toward her future, not hiding her voice, but letting it soar. My phone lit up with a text from Zoe. Dad wants to expand the bookstore, says we need more room for the local authors section. Wonder whose fault that is. I smiled, thinking about the shy writers who now approached me at the store, sharing their hidden manuscripts, their secret dreams. Every time I told them the same thing: your voice matters, use it. The cursor blinked on my screen. Waiting. Outside, rain tapped against the windows of my new apartment, smaller than the old house, but filled with books and light and possibility. I began to type. This time, there was no bathroom hiding spot, no secret pen name, no fear of judgment, just words flowing from my fingers, telling stories that needed to be told. My story wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't about Bryant or betrayal, or even forgiveness. It was about finding my voice, and finally, gloriously, using it. The bookstore hummed with excited voices as readers filled every available space. My father stood near the entrance, beaming as he directed traffic. Zoe arranged the last few chairs in our newly expanded reading area. Ready? Rachel touched my shoulder, clipboard in hand. I nodded, watching the crowd settle. This wasn't just another book signing or reading. This was different. Welcome to Writer's Voice, I said into the microphone. A safe space for hidden stories. The workshop participants, 20 aspiring writers, clutched their notebooks. Some had been hiding their words for years, decades even, just like I had. Before we begin, I said, I want to introduce someone. Bryant stepped forward from the back of the store. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. He looked different, calmer, less polished, more real. Hi, he said simply. I'm here to talk about what happens when you steal someone else's voice instead of finding your own. The room fell silent. This wasn't part of the program they'd signed up for. My first book comes out next month, he continued. A children's story about a little boy who learns it's okay to fail. I wrote every word myself. It's not going to win awards. It might not even sell well, but it's mine. I watched the workshop participants lean forward, drawn in by his honesty. The hardest part wasn't the public shame or the legal consequences, Bryant said. It was facing myself in the mirror and admitting I'd silenced someone else because I was too afraid to speak with my own voice. Sylvia, sitting in the front row, wiped her eyes. Now, I took the microphone back. Let's talk about your stories, the ones you've been afraid to tell. One by one, they shared. A grandmother who'd been writing romance novels in secret for 30 years. A teenager with a sci-fi epic hidden under his bed. A businessman who wrote poetry during his lunch breaks. Why do we hide? I asked them. Fear of judgment, someone called out. Not good enough, said another. Family expectations, a quiet voice added. I pulled out my first novel, the one Bryant had claimed. This book isn't just about finding your voice. It's about what happens when you let others silence it. The door chimed. My father led in a group of young writers from the local high school, where I'd started mentoring. Your voice matters, I told the room. Even if it shakes, even if it whispers, even if you think no one wants to hear it. Bryant stood up again. I have something for everyone here. He handed out copies of his children's book, not yet released. This is what starting over looks like. It's not perfect, but it's authentic. I watched him interact with the workshop participants, saw how they responded to his vulnerability. Redemption wasn't about grand gestures. It was about small truths, quietly shared. The bookstore's writing group meets every Tuesday, I announced. You're all welcome, no hiding allowed. Afterward, as the crowd thinned, Sylvia approached Bryant. Their relationship was still fragile, but healing. I'm proud of you, she said softly. Not because of success or failure, but because you're finally being honest. Rachel caught my eye, pointing to her watch. I had a publisher's meeting in an hour about my next book. Go, Zoe said. I'll clean up here. But I wasn't ready to leave. The energy in the room felt too important to abandon. The meeting can wait, I told Rachel. These stories can't. I sat with the remaining participants, listening to their hidden words emerge, each voice unique, each story valuable. Bryant joined us, keeping a respectful distance, but participating genuinely. I'm learning to listen, he said when someone asked why he was there. Really listen. My father brought us coffee, pride shining in his eyes as he watched his expanded bookstore become exactly what it was meant to be, a sanctuary for stories. "This feels right," he said, squeezing my shoulder. The afternoon sun slanted through the windows, illuminating the fresh paint on the wall behind the reading area. In careful letters, we'd written, "Every voice matters." Under it, bookshelves held works by local authors, their dreams no longer hidden in storage rooms or bathroom writing sessions. My books sat among them, not above, not below, just part of the chorus. "Same time next week?" someone asked as the workshop wound down. "Every week," I promised, "for as long as there are stories to tell." Bryant paused at the door on his way out. "Thank you," he said quietly, "not for forgiving me, but for showing me what real writing looks like." I watched him leave, then turned back to my notebook where I'd been jotting down ideas for the next workshop. The page was filled with possibilities, each one a potential voice waiting to be heard. The bookstore settled into evening quiet, but it wasn't silence anymore. It was anticipation, the peaceful pause between words that makes the story possible. I opened my laptop and began to write.